Hey, how's it going? And welcome to Whiskey Wins with me, Stuart. Today, another live stream. Not done one for a while. Once again, the nerves have kicked back in. Unfortunately, not got Stevie tonight. He's not able to join us. Currently over him for work in the Netherlands, so it's just me and a special guest who I'll bring in later. But yeah, he's not here to hold my hand through it, so I'll try and do my best, and hopefully we'll have a good time. But we're here, and we're going to talk about forgotten bottles, underrated distilleries, or just whiskies that are left behind, whiskies that people don't generally think of. So yeah, we'll get right into that, and I'll play the intro to give myself a wee breather. So hopefully the audio is all good and you can see me crystal clear. And yeah, hopefully this goes smoothly. So yeah, underrated whiskies. I think when I first started my whiskey journey, I was always looking at the kind of big brands, like Dalmore, or should we not name Dalmore, but things like Dalmore. I was kind of drawn to nice packaging, things like Balvenie, Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie, or Glenmorangie, however you want to pronounce it. And I wasn't really sure about lesser known distilleries, even distilleries to me like Springbank, a big Springbank fanboy that I am, and I didn't even know it existed. And it wasn't until my dad, he used to work with the haulage company, he's now just retired a week ago, so good luck to him. But yeah, he used to work with a haulage company, and customers that he would work with would give him whiskies as gifts for kind of doing custom with them. And one of the whiskies that they gave them was a Springbank 10. And then there was a long repeated that came a couple months later, and then a Springbank 15 a couple months later. And I remember having these whiskies in my selection, in my collection at the time. I had things like Dalmore, King Alexander, Three, and other kind of big whiskies like that, kind of over-presented whiskies. And I had this Springbank 10, this long row, and Springbank 15, thinking, what the hell has my dad got me? This looks like a load of crap. Looking up the price, looking, this isn't going to be any good. And then obviously I got into it and realised how good Springbank was. So that's kind of my theme, my kind of idea for tonight is distilleries that we overlook and kind of distilleries that I've found and that we've found and that have really proved to be interesting, tasty, and intriguing distilleries. So I think there's a lot of whiskies I tend to overlook in general, especially on my channel, and there's some that I want to try more of. But yeah, we'll get on to that, and I'm going to introduce some people, see who's all in the chat. So we've got Mark Slinger here. It's good to see you, Mark. We've got Jimmy Jazz. He's also here. We've got Bart from the Netherlands who says he's having a dram with Stevie. That would be very interesting. I'm sure you wouldn't get peace. We've got Steve Whiskey Breyer. We have Mark Russell, and we've also got Gibby in the comments. So hi to you all, and thanks for joining. So yeah, I'll get right down to it. I've kind of written a list down of distilleries that, or yeah, distilleries that I've overlooked on the channel and that I should probably look into more. I think I have reasons for some of them, some that I don't necessarily want to explore, but that sounds like a real hypocritical approach, and I probably should explore them. But there's just some for me that I've maybe had some bad experience with in the past and won't really explore more. So the big one is like Dalmore. I've been bitten too many times with Dalmore. I know they can produce some good whiskies, but at the moment it's just too much price and too much packaging for what you're really getting and too much colouring. But there's things like Ardmore, Aberfeldy, Ailshire Bay, and I think Ailshire Bay, if I'm right, I had a couple drams at Ailshire Bay when it kind of first came out, and for some reason I just really didn't like it. Even though being a big Lowland fan, I just couldn't get into it. So it was a bit weird that I didn't really like that, and I thought that was something that I would enjoy, but it was just at the time I didn't really like the drink that I was having. So it's possible that I need to get back into Ailshire Bay and have more of that to try. But it'd be interesting to see what you guys think, to see if some of these distilleries, if you have also overlooked them, or if there's distilleries that I list out that you think are definite winners. I mean, I know some people really love Ardmore. and it's one that I just don't really reach for and don't really see myself buying. I've had a few, and they've not impressed me overly, but maybe I'm just not looking in the right place. So there's Balmainac. I've got a bottle of Balmainac, and we're going to have some of that tonight. It's the 10-year-old from Royal Mile Whiskies, bottled for Sandy Alexander. He worked there for 20 years, so this is to commemorate him. They've done these releases, these rare finds for employees to commemorate their work over the years. And yeah, I bought that. It was in Drinkmonger and Pitlochry. Saw it on the shelf. There was Glen Elgin, Balmainac, and a Clynelish, I believe. And to be fair, Glen Elgin and Clynelish are quite known to me. I'm quite familiar with them, whereas Balmainac, I didn't even know that distillery really existed. So when I saw it, I thought, why not? My girlfriend actually bought me it as a gift, £55. I thought, yeah, I'll take the plunge and see what it's like. Bruichladdich one that's quite surprising that I've overlooked recently, and I don't know why, but I've had like Octomore and stuff, but Bruichladdich for some reason, I'm not sure if it's just because it's competing with other Islay distilleries, maybe things like independent bottled Kalilas and things like that. That's maybe why I don't go for Bruichladdich. But I know Bruichladdich have a huge following, especially like on Facebook and that. You see these like friends of Bruichladdich groups and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to get into more Bruichladdich. Craigellachie, Dalhuin, which are I've not really covered on my channel. I've got a few Dalhuins, and I do enjoy them. I think they're quite waxy, quite nice mouthfeel whiskies. But yeah, I've got one tonight. I can't wait to get back into this because I love this whiskey. In fact, I'll just show you what it is because I'm excited already. It's the 15-year-old from Cadenhead, and it's just a great whiskey. So yeah, Dalhuin I've not covered on the channel, and I really do need to cover more of it because it's a great distillery, and I want more people to kind of cast their eyes on it, get into it because it's good stuff. Eduard, another one I've not spent much time with on the channel, but I know they produce quality stuff. Glencadam, Glenburgie, Glenmoray, Kingsbarns. I had the Dream to Dram when it first came out, and I thought that was absolutely fantastic. But I didn't buy a bottle. I don't know why. It was cheap. It was from Fife. Maybe that was part to do with it, since I'm from Falkirk and the love-hate relationship we have with our Fife fellow men. Loch Lomond, I've not really had a lot of Loch Lomond. I've had a couple of drams here and there. Never bought a bottle, never covered it on the channel. Oban, Speyburn, Talisker, and Tormore as well. All whiskies that I've kind of overlooked on my channel, and some that I should cover. I'm just wondering if there's any that I've mentioned that you think I should be covering, that I should be getting into on the channel, because it does seem like I'm not covering a lot. It seems like there's a lot of distilleries that I'm overlooking. So I'm just going to go back into the chat, have a little look, and give myself another break from talking, some water, maybe some more beer. So we've got Neil Laverty here. We got Ryan. Ryan's in. He says you'll be disappointed in my bottle choice then. Haha. I wonder if that's Ailshire Bay he was referring to. Jimmy Jazz. These two I wish I had found sooner, is Dalhuin and Ben Nevis. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Ben Nevis is one that I've been getting really into recently, and I was at the Pot Still just the other day, and I think I had a 22 or 23-year-old Ben Nevis. It was good, but I still think I prefer young Ben Nevis. I think young Ben Nevis is where it's at. But totally agree with Dalhuin. Interesting call that, Bruichladdich. Yeah, it's for some reason, Bart, it's just one that I can't seem to bring myself to buy. I think I've got Bruichladdich beer barley and the Bruichladdich Port Charlotte from Stevie, and they're okay, but it's just maybe I just need to explore them more. But it just seems like there's other whiskies that I want to buy prior to buying any Bruichladdich or plunging into Bruichladdich. Brian said Ben Rinnes. Yeah, I've got a Ben Rinnes here as an example, and yeah, Ben Rinnes is definitely a great distillery and provides some really tasty whiskey. But at the same time, I've had a real hit and miss relationship with Ben Rinnes. With Dalhuin so far, and things like maybe Glen Elgin, I seem to have almost always had a win with Glen Elgin and Dalhuin, but when it came to Ben Rinnes, it's always been a kind of hit and a miss. Mark says he's a fan of Bruichladdich himself. Never sad when bought a bottle, so that's good to know. Steve M, really enjoying the Glen Turret range. Would be interesting to hear your thoughts. So I'm guessing that's the new Glen Turret range, the rebrand. I can't actually say I've ever had a Glen Turret I'm not really impressed with the new rebranding because it comes with an added premium. But yeah, it'd be interesting to explore them anyway, maybe get some samples or something. But yeah, I don't know if I'll be taking the plunge to buy a bottle unless they go on sale. Frankie saying, hey everyone, hey Frankie. Whiskey Novice is in, Jim, nice to see you, thanks for joining us. Glen Vore, yeah, Blair Athol. Yeah, Blair Athol. I'm not sure that I've overlooked it on my YouTube channel, but others might have overlooked Blair Athol, but I'll keep that my secret because I love Blair Athol. So David Hong, Glen Rothis. Yeah, Glen Rothis is one of those distilleries that seem to be quite prominent, seem to be quite infamous, I feel. I mean, they've been around and they've got themselves a good brand, but I don't think it's one that a lot of people reach for. I think you're right. Bruichladdich is often pricey and too much going on. It's hard to keep up with where they're at. Yeah, what is Bruichladdich? Love the old 10, haven't tasted anything like that ever since. Yeah, it's a shame when distilleries do kind of special releases or too many exploration releases and they end up losing themselves, losing their characters. So Jim's had a couple of Penrynys IVs and he hasn't been convinced by either. That's gutting because I've had some good Penrynys, but I know what you mean. Kilcoman, another I'll drink regular. Have you reviewed it before? No, Mark, that's not one I've reviewed yet. And I don't actually have any Kilcoman. I think I had is it the Mahir Bay or Macher Bay? It was nice. I think I've had the Loch Gorm as well, but yeah, it's not one I buy. I don't know when. I think maybe just with Isla, I always tend to go for like Ardbeg Ugi and Ardbeg 10, and then Kalila if it's independently bottled, things like that. So I think it's really hard for me to explore different Islas because I'm quite set in my way with Islas, which is obviously contradicting this whole point of this video. But yeah, I'm a bit set in my ways with Isla, which is a bit of a shame. So yeah, Markson as well. Good evening, everyone. So yeah, the next kind of point, the next list that I wanted to basically say is to do with whiskies that are overlooked by everyone. I mean, that list was basically whiskies I've overlooked on my channel and not really reviewed. But I think there's a few here that everyone tends to overlook, and it's Ailsa Bay. I don't know if it's maybe because they were a new distillery. People don't really know that they're there, maybe, or don't know about them. But their first whiskey was in 2019, and they're more famous for the distillery. The site's more famous for Girvan, which does grain, and that's been there a lot longer, producing a lot longer. So they've done their first whiskey, their first malt in 2019. You've got Annandale as well in the Lowlands, which is overlooked by most. Their first whiskey was in 2018, so maybe once again, same theme as Ailsa Bay, a little bit newer, and people aren't quite sure of it yet or aren't aware of it yet. So they released one called Man of Sword and Man of Words, and I've actually tasted them both. I think they were quite pricey, quite a high premium on them because it was their first release, and I wasn't too impressed with them, unfortunately. But yeah, Annandale and Ailsa Bay as new distilleries. Auchentoshan, I think Auchentoshan gets overlooked by most. Sometimes good reason. I'm not a big fan of triple distillation. I mean, like I said, I love Springbank, but I don't like Hazelburn because it's triple distillation. I've had some Hazelburn that are nice, and that's the exact same with Auchentoshan. I've had some Auchentoshan that are nice, but I don't tend to reach for it because it's triple distilled, and that's probably a real flaw in my character. But we were in the pot still, like I said, I was in the pot still with a whiskey bond, Mark, and he got the Auchentoshan, and it was the distillery cask, and the smell on it, I think it was a red wine barrique, and the smell on it was absolutely fantastic. And he really enjoyed the palate as well. So it goes to show you there are definite kind of wins from these distilleries. You just need to go explore it. Dalyuen, yeah, Diageo owned. I think the majority goes to blends, possibly Johnny Walker. Our guest, will bring him in soon. He'll be able to tell us a lot more about Dalyuen and where that goes. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the majority goes to Johnny Walker. So that's maybe why that gets overlooked. Like the majority of these distilleries that are owned by Diageo, owned by big companies that go to blends, they're overlooked because the fact that they go to blends and they've not got that big promotional or marketing release from the official distilleries. Eduard, who only do 18 casks per week, according to Wikipedia. No kiln, no chill filtering. All sounds good. It's a small distillery. It's quite traditional distillery. Maybe the reason that it gets overlooked is because it's so small, because it's owned by Signatory, and the signatory maybe gets marketed more, nicer bottlings, nicer look. So I'm not sure if Eduard are kind of in a shadow of signatory as an independent bottler, but Eduard are fantastic, and I've had some great whiskies from them. Glasgow Distillery. Now, I wanted to bring this up because we went to go to Glasgow Distillery, and yes, they don't do any tours, so we decided to phone up and try and ask for a tour, maybe get them some coverage. We're going to take a couple of videos, maybe do a YouTube live or a YouTube video on new distilleries. And we phoned them. They said they'd get back to me. They didn't get back to me, so I phoned them again, and then they said it was just something they didn't accommodate. So that was unfortunate. Their first whiskey was in 2019, and they also released 50 cl bottles. So that's my reasoning for that being forgotten or overlooked. Is no tours, so you can't go around the distillery, you can't experience it, you can't take it in. 50 cl bottles and relatively new distillery. Glenglassaugh, people seem to overlook this distillery quite a lot, but I find that quite hard to believe. It's owned by Brown-Forman, and I've had plentiful of Glenglassaugh. Stevie's got a shelf dedicated to Glenglassaugh, and they're all fantastic. I don't think I've had a bad one from memory. Even the independent releases, they're all quite good. But the official bottlings, the core range whiskies are good value for money. They're accessible, affordable, and yeah, they're tasty drams once again. So it's hard to see why people look over Glenglassaugh, but I put this out to Instagram and some chats, and people mention Glenglassaugh a couple of times, saying they overlook it. But yeah, I'd urge you to try Glenglassaugh because I've had some joy in it. Stevie's had some joy in it, and yeah, good whiskey. Inchgour, once again, owned by Diageo, and I believe the majority of this goes to Bell's, like my love for Blair Athol, my love Blair Athol, it goes to Bell's, the majority of that. Luckily, there's plentiful, there's a variety of independent bottles out there that will bottle Blair Athol. Blair Athol could be an overlooked distillery, but unfortunately it's not overlooked by me, which is a good thing, I suppose, actually. I don't know why I'm saying unfortunately, just getting tied up in my words. And Tormore, who's owned by Pernod Ricard, which is Chivas, and I believe most of that will probably go to blends, although I don't know which blends, but our guest might be able to tell us. He's a lot more informed than I, and probably a lot more coherent than I, and more articulate than I. So yeah, we'll bring the guest in, and yeah, I definitely want to talk a little bit about Tormore and Dalyuen, or just find out where the majority of this blend, what blends they go to, and what their feelings are on these distilleries, because I know they're big advocates for the distilleries. So before we bring in our guest, who people will probably guess who it is already, we will look at some comments. So Annandale is impressive. So yeah, I had the Man of Swords and the Man of Words, and I didn't think much of it, but maybe it was just a sample. Maybe I just didn't enjoy it at the time. Maybe now that I'm a bit more competent in drinking whiskey and not just drinking it to get a little bit drunk, that I'll appreciate it better. I had one Ailshire Bay and one Annandale. Absolutely loved them both. Too expensive though. So this is completely a contrast to my thoughts. I'm just getting absolutely ruined. Everybody else enjoys it but me. Maybe I'm just trying to go against the grain. Neil Laverty, if it's not natural colour and chill filtered, do you not bother with it? No, not really. I just thought that was a good point to bring up with Eduard. They always do non-chill filtered and natural colour, so I'm surprised that I've not bought more of them because of that, because they stick to that kind of that contract, if you will, that Ralphie says. But no, I'll buy something if it's been chill filtered, if it has colour in. I tend not to buy if it's got a lot of colour in it. Like I try not to go for colour, to be honest, but if it has got colour and if it is a good whiskey, even if it's chill filtered, I think as long as it's a good whiskey, as long as it's affordable, as long as it's not overpriced and overpackaged, if it's got colour and if it's been chill filtered, as long as it's a good whiskey, then I don't see why it really matters. I mean, I try to always steer towards unchill filtered and natural colouring because I'm a big fan of like cask strength whiskies and I like them naturally presented. But if it's a nice whiskey, I'll buy it. If I've tried it and I've enjoyed it that much, then I will buy it. But I think the majority of my collection is probably uncoloured and unchill filtered. Yeah, so Mark's just saying that Annandale that we had, where he had in the pot still was a Bordeaux. Auchentoshan gets overlooked because most of their official bottlings are terrible, and Jim's own opinion. Yeah, I would agree with you. I've not really found an Auchentoshan other than that one that I smelt with Mark. It was quite good. But I've had the American oak. I've had, I think, is it triple oak or something like that, or three oak, and I've also had the blood oak, and didn't really find much joy in any of them, unfortunately. I'm sure Jason reviewed Auchentoshan Distillery Exclusive Bordeaux, and he gave it an 8. Yeah, so that's pretty high from Jason. What else have we got here? Dram Divided here. Is it Fred? Fred's here. I don't know if I believe it's a double account, two people in the account, but I'm sure it's Fred. Bart Inchgower has so much potential, never had a bad one, but rarely a great one. That's good to know. And Highland Hamish is here. Greetings from Inverness. Last thing from Jim, just a little. So no more dodgy Dalmores then, Stuart. No, not in the foreseeable, unless they kind of take away their big packaging and their premium prices and colouring and she'll fill in maybe. Yeah, we'll see, but not anytime soon. So it's a good time. It's a good chance to bring in our guest now. A good point in the live. I've just burped as well, so I'm sorry if you heard that. But yeah, it's a good it's a good interlude. I don't know to bring our guest in. So anyway, I'm going to bring him in before I trip up over more words. So we have Jason in, and here he is. Please save me, Jason.
Sorry. Save you from what?
I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Just save me from myself.
I don't think anybody can do that from what I've seen, to be honest with you, but we can try.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was just talking about Dalyun and Tormore. I'm not sure if you caught it, if you were backstage kind of listening. But yeah, have you got much to say on Dalyun and Tormore as an advocate of those distilleries?
I think, for the purpose of enjoying whiskey, I should say as very little as possible sometimes, because things just go the other way. I think in the case of Tormore, it's very variable, but it's a lot of enjoyment when you get a good one. In terms of the blends, I think traditionally it was Long John, I think, was the original Tormore blend because they built the distillery, and Cream of Barley, I think, as well. These are very old blends. Possibly not even around anymore. But I think generally now it's the Chivas blends it goes into. Dao Yuan is about 98%, a bit like Blair Athol, goes into its owner's blends. So it's the Diageo blends. I think you said Johnny Walker's the main one. And of course, most famously, as people will know, when Kleinlich was out of action, it was Dao Yuan they picked to fill the gap. So that's where they go, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think for me there is a real kind of similarity between Dalyun and Clynleash, whether it's that waxiness or what. But I do get that similar kind of mouthfeel with Dalyun, and that's one of the main reasons that I've really got into it.
Yeah, that's why they picked it. And I think I've been saying for a few years. Was it 2015 or 2013? I can't remember exactly when Clynelish was out of action, but they upped the waxiness at the distillery. They maxed it out. They were running it at a loss to cover Clynelish, and just amazing liquid they're apparently producing. Of course, not a single cask of it has come on the market yet, but I'm eagerly keeping an eye out for when it does. But we've got this Johnny Walker experience in Edinburgh now, so I suppose they'll probably be trying to supply that for Kingdom Come. So hopefully we get to see some Dalyun of that era on the market in the next 10 years.
Have you got any kind of whiskies that you think are overlooked, terribly overlooked, that you think should be appreciated more?
It's a good question. I think it's probably easier sometimes to talk about the ones that we spend too much time looking on. Because when you look at the whole list of the Scottish distilleries, you actually realise just how many of them are pretty ignored. I mean, you mentioned Ardmore, which officially has a really poor presence, but I actually some fantastic unofficial bottlings of Ardmore. Auchentoshan, as you rightly said, for many years, the only place to get a decent Auchentoshan is at the distillery. But even then, they've stuck prices up now, and it's a bit hit or miss. What you really want is, like you say, a good Weinberg. Some of the sherry ones I've had haven't been great, but you're paying for the nose. Of Thrusk, I like. It depends on what your idea of overlooked is. I mean, Bow Blair for many years was overlooked, yet now might be one that people are aware of. I I'm just having a little look. I mean, Ben Romick certainly isn't overlooked now, but
No,
it depends on your level of interest in whiskey, isn't it? I mean, if you're just shopping in the supermarket, most of these things will be way out of your reach. I mean, even if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have said Deanston, but that doesn't apply
uh,
anymore because that's way up there. Nobody likes Dufftown, so there's no point even mentioning that. And
I've got a
Fettercairn,
few Duff Downs.
it's yeah, we call it dirty, dirty Dufftown. It's just a mass-produced 24/7, 7 days a week distillery. It's not very picturesque. It's not particularly great. You mentioned Glenglassaugh, which I think they're doing some really good young stuff now.
Yeah,
So I think that's definitely one that's going to be on the list. Glenlossie, to a certain extent, has got a little hardcore audience, but that's one I would say. Glenord, I think, is one that some people are really switched on to now. You get a lot of independent Glenorg, and I think that's a really good distillery. Glen Spey's, I mean, that's overlooked for a reason, I think, to be fair. Glen Talkers, I don't know if you mentioned that one.
no,
That's definitely,
no. I've got a bottle of Glen Talkers here at the show, but it was surprising because I don't think I've ever had a Glen Talkers before, and then I got this Carnmore one, and
yeah.
it wasn't that quick. Uh, or I didn't have it open that long, and it's went down really, really nice. Just a great whiskey.
It's fantastic fruity distillate, mainly into blends again. But I mean, on its own, there's some really great, well-aged ones as well. I think somebody else mentioned Inchgour for good reason. I think that's excellent, and the current Caden's Inchgour sherry finish is
Yeah.
that's really good. So that was good to see. We're going through these alphabetically, aren't we?
Well, Fetter
I
Cairn, you
think,
brought up Fetter Cairn. It's
yeah,
funny because I despise Fetter Cairn, and maybe it's a White and Mackay legacy to do with Dalmore, and it's just bit me too many times with Dalmore. But Fetter Cairn's official bottlings, maybe despise is the wrong word. I don't think they're great at all. I've had
no,
the 12. I don't think I've had the 16, but I think it was the 22 at a festival. Sorry, there's fruit flies in here, and they love whiskey. But yeah, I had the 22-year-old official bottling, and it was about, I don't know, £400 or something for the bottle,
yeah, it's
something ridiculous.
ridiculous.
And the Tomatin 30-year-old, an 8-year-older whiskey was about £300 or something, a much better whiskey. But it's funny because independently bottled Fettercairn, so I always overlooked Fettercairn. I said, forget about it. I'm not going anywhere near Fettercairn. But then I've had some independent bottled Fettercairns, a Cadenhead one. I think it's Cooper's Choice or Copper's Choice, something like that. And they have
Coopers,
been
yeah.
fantastic. Like tropical fruits, pineapple, like really bursting with these nice fresh tropical fruits, and really enjoying Fettercairn at the moment in the bottling.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched upon the common theme there, which is White and Mackay. They have a certain way of doing things. Faircairns, I mean, they've taken that brand and tried to stick it in a premium market, a little bit like Mortlach did, and it just hasn't worked because people aren't going to pay several £100s for something they haven't heard of and which isn't the best presented whiskey, despite how well you design the bottle and everything. But it's just a modern problem that we have in whiskey at the moment.
Yeah,
Knockdo or a knock, that's one I would pick out. Probably more the Knockdo bottlings that Cadence do. I really have time for them. Um, Linkwood, some of the Loch
yeah,
Lomond distillates as well. I think there's quite a few there which are really, really good. Inchmoan, Inchfad, there's the other one which is the more sweet, Inchmuirin. So there's a whole world of Loch Lomonds which is well worth picking out. Then there's the children's television program Macallum, which I think is quite overlooked because nobody seems to actually drink it anymore. Uh, yeah, it just amazes you when you start looking at the list of
yeah. I
whiskies.
mean, I was going through a couple of days ago just trying to get some sort of list of whiskies that I've overlooked and not done in the channel, but there was too many. Right? It's just
Yeah, there's too
unreal how
many.
many whiskies there are, and that's only ones that are obviously still producing. There's so many that are like closed now that I've not had and stuff as well. But yeah, it's unreal how many whiskies I tend to overlook, and I
Yeah.
make try and find myself or describe myself as a whiskey enthusiast, but I don't know if I can now after I've been a bit depressed at how many distilleries I've realised that I've been kind of forgetting about. But I
No,
don't
you
know if
can't
you've.
do them all. So
No, you can't. Have you had much Balmainach?
yes, I have. There's a link to that. No, 007's got a link to that distillery. If you want to go back in time. So I think, I went to an old and rare show 5 years ago, which people will know the old and rare show, and the best bottle I had all night was a Cadenhead's Balmenic teenage whiskey in one of the old green bottles for about £4 a dram, and it was just fantastic fruity whiskey.
Mm,
So I've always been always on the lookout for more Balmenic. I don't actually think I probably have any in the house at the moment, but it's certainly one that's on the radar. And the distillery now has probably got more push behind its owners as a
yeah.
gin distillery, and they do a gin tour. But they've got this legacy of whiskey, which is far more rewarding and better to drink. So,
Yeah, I
again, it's
mean,
just another producer that just fails to harness the potential in front of them.
I think this was £54.95. It comes in a fancy box, the rare find ones. But it's
Yeah,
51.2%, 10-year old, non-chill filtered, natural colour. And the flavours from it, it's a great oily mouthfeel. It's apple, kind of crumble, cinnamon in that. It's like you say, it is fruity, but it's got so much depth that I'm really enjoying it. And I've not been got that far through it.
good.
But I think Balminac is one that I'm going to be exploring a lot more after just having a few sips of this because it's that great, well, that good. I think.
Well, I think yeah, you pick. You can't have all of them as much. I think we're all greedy of buying too many bottles and then not actually drinking them. So I think it's maybe best to focus on a distillery or two and then move on once you've got the gist of that and you've appreciated it for what it is. Um, but the Royal Mile range, I haven't had that one, but I had the Glen Elgin and the Kleinlich, and both good picks.
Yeah,
So hopefully they do that again for stuff.
yeah. I mean, the Glen Elgin's one that I wanted to touch on. I've got a dram of that as well. Once again by Carnmore. I've brought a lot of time for Carnmore recently. I think their stuff's fantastic. But the Glen Elgin's one that I first got onto with a whiskey show in Edinburgh, and Lady of the Glen were there, and they had their 11 Tawny Port one. They had a little sample, but they had nothing left. It was like the last bottle, and they were just giving people samples of it. It was absolutely fantastic, so pink in colour, and the Tawny Port wasn't overpowering anything, just nice. And then I ended up buying a bottle of a 15-year-old Glen Elgin Tawny Port, and that was good, just not as good. But the Glen Elgin is another whiskey that I seem to be finding real character and real strength with.
Yeah, that probably one of my best whiskies of the years. The What Whiskey Glen Elgin 14-year-old. It's just perfect single cask pick. So yeah, I mean you don't see too much Glen Elgin. Again, it just goes into blends.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a real surge of Glen Elgin recently, and I was speaking to Nick in the Aberdeen Whisky Shop, and he was saying that a lot of independent bottlers are coming to him with Glen Elgin, and he's having to turn down some because there's kind of no variety or no distinction from one Glen Elgin to the other when it comes to independent bottlers. Like they're all trying to push out the same kind of product.
I think that's probably. I mean, Diageo are very strict now about their casks, so they're probably releasing a parcel of casks. I mean, they produce so much, and maybe there's no need for certain blends or to produce some, so they've got a surplus of stock they can sell it on. I just hope that what happens is an independent hearing that from a retailer doesn't just go and stick that whiskey, perfectly good whiskey, in a cask just to give it color or a different edge, so they can bump the price up and then get that cask sold at retail. Because at the end of the day, I mean, Glen Elgin's a fine spirit. There's no need to go tampering with it just to give some variation.
Yeah.
Let it go. So I think just people are a little bit snobbish when it comes to casks, but that's just a totally different topic.
We'll just dive into the chat a little bit. So we've got Welsh Toro in. He's saying good evening. He's recently finished an amazing Dalyun 18. Yeah, we've been discussing Dalyun. It's a distillery that I'm really enjoying and a distillery that Jason's got a lot of time for. Bart's saying Glenord. As you were discussing Glenord, I've yet to find a Glenord I like, and it's a bit of a shame. I've had a Cadenhead one, I've had a single cask one, and I think I've had some samples with people, and I had a Carnmore one the other night, and it's just not something that I'm kind of drawn to. I'm not sure. I find it quite, even the age of it, find the spirit quite young, quite sprightly, and maybe a little bit too crisp, too clean, almost. I wouldn't say synthetic, but kind of like that. I'm not a big fan of the Glenord distillate. Linkwood is one of Mark's favourites. Yeah, I've got a lot of time for Linkwood. I had quite a good few Linkwoods. Glen Talker's such an underrated distillery. Older refill hockeys work really well. Erwin saying everything he's had from Glen Elgin has been class. Yeah, I'd agree. I've yet to come across a bad one. And we've also got Matin multi haggis muncher. So yeah, seems like Mark's saying he's a big fan of his local distillery,
Yeah,
Glenburgie.
yeah, I've got the Glenburgie to have tonight actually, so I'm looking forward to that. There's a whiskey out there for everybody. You've just got to find it. And also, the whole thing about single casks is you are paying for that exclusivity and that variation. So just because you've had a bad one doesn't mean you just haven't found the right one for you. But unfortunately, these days, the price of whiskey, how quickly it sells, you might not get an opportunity to get that one for you or get a spare to have another day. So really,
I think
really
it's been
tricky.
quite kind of positive and promising with the virtual tastings and things like that with these independent bottles like Carmore and Cadenheads doing these releases because it gets a feel for whiskies that people wouldn't normally buy a bottle of, but they might participate in the small sample and splurge
Yeah.
maybe what £30 or 25, £40, whatever it is, for a good couple of samples. What are your thoughts? Right,
Mm-hmm.
this is going
Go
to
on.
be very decisive here, and I might have to kick you out the chat. Tullabarden, right? Because I overlooked Tullabarden for a great while because I didn't think it had much promise, and the core range wasn't always there. But I've really enjoyed Tullabarden recently, and I've bought quite a few bottles of Tullabarden. Where are you at with Tullabarden?
It used to be Pish. It was, I mean, Tullabarden's, I mean, if you went there, it was on the edge of like a motorway service station, pretty, felt out of place. All this stuff with the nonsense date they put on as the being, selling it as what, 17 or whatever it was. Ridiculous. This is a 1900s distillery. But it was owned by Invergordon distillers for a while who were really much very poor wood quality, just ramming the stuff out. And subsequent owners really didn't address that issue, and they just had a lot of inept whiskey. Um, but they have quite a huge, variation in ages. So that Tullibardine, no. A little bit like Deanston probably was maybe prior to 2011. Just what it was, almost like white label supermarket dirt cheap whiskey. It wasn't anything special. New owners come in, bought that site, heavily invested in the facilities, the casks, and we're definitely going to see a much better whiskey. And I think the 15, I think, is very good. So I think it's definitely on the up. But as with Deanston, it's about changing people's perceptions, and you can only do that just by releasing good whiskey and sticking it, as you said, with
Yeah,
tastings under people's noses.
yeah. I'm sure me as a huge Instagram and YouTube influencer will change people's minds about Tullabarden. It's a great whiskey. um,
I'm probably more an anti-influencer. I have no time for the people who influence the way they do with the pouts. And this is free. It's fantastic. It's almost a badge of honor to me when I get kicked off somebody's PR list because I've just been given an honest opinion, because that just shows you the people that they work with and maintain are just going to avoid telling you the truth. So fair enough. So influence is a dirty word to me. So, but
yeah,
I get it.
it's that.
People want information and they want guidance because, if you're going to spend 50, 60, 70, 80, £100 on something, you want to make sure it's right for you. And unfortunately, there aren't many shops now where you can get in and get a sample try before you buy. So you've got
Yeah,
to find the right sources for you. So sure, some people don't like me. Sure, some people don't like honest scores, but as long as you're being honest, and people will find people that they feel is right or they'll take notice of, and they'll take it from there. So be yourself and you find your own market, whoever you are.
yeah. Yeah. It's definitely the whole kind of samples and influencer. Definitely a topic for another time that I could get right into. But I would not tonight. What are you? What have you got in your glass at the moment? Then what have you got poured?
Uh, I just poured a Dao Yuan, a 22-year-old Dao Yuan.
Yeah, from Signatory.
Yeah, the old style. So I picked this up recently in Luvians it's actually on the tin, £77 for a
Oh yeah,
22-year-old. So just really, really good. Gets better as you get down the bottle. So I think I gave a positive review. Somebody contacted me to see if they could get a bottle, and I said, well, they had another two on the shelf. If you contact them, they might send you one, which they did. And I thought, well, I better go get myself another one for my friend Rose. So I went up and
Yeah,
got the last one, but there might be some out there because, as you said, the advantage of a lot of the distilleries you've mentioned is you've got a chance to buy them because
yeah,
everybody else just looks over. I mean, some of them are probably caked in dust, depending where they are. People are just going to walk past a Glenbergie or a Jura for good reason, or a Dal Ewan. So it's just get yourself out there, speak to people, find out what's best, and sometimes if you know it, you like a distillery, you hear the year's good or the bottler's good. The best thing is sometimes just to take that punt if you can afford it.
yeah. Is that the 40? Are they 46%? Those old bottlings,
No, this one is older. This is the 43. So I think this
right?
is the tail
43.
end of this range. This was bottled in 2019, but this range has been going for many years. But yeah, this is 43. Some you'll know as well for experience. Some whiskies won't hold up at that level or even 40, but some will if it's
Yeah.
good distillate in a cask, which this one does.
Well, I think it's definitely time for me to move on to my value and then that 15-year-old from Cadenhead.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a cracking dram. I think 60-ish quid was it?
Yeah,
Um,
I think I got it off the auction for about that. Yeah, about 70 quid. I paid a
it,
premium because I missed
it
out.
gets me all these people that buy these bottles and put them into auction, which are just new releases, and yet they're not going to make money on these things, or it's bizarre, especially with some of the Malt Society releases as well. They just buy it, and probably people are buying the Springbank 10 to do the same now.
Yeah,
But I think that was a cracking whiskey. I still have halfway through my bottle, and I think I've still got a spare. And I had a second spare, but I let that go to somebody cost price. I just thought just it'll get better as you get further in, but I just thought a wee bit of water did great, but it really showcased how good the distillery was. And Cadence a couple of weeks ago got a shipment in of old bottles from the last 9 years almost of and the list was, I mean, by the time I got to it, most of the bigger names, if you want to call it, had been cherry picked. But just looking down, like Glenbergie was definitely there. Probably some Ben Renascence, the usual names which people just
yeah,
aren't drawn to on the blackboard or online. And there were two bottles of a Dalyu, an 18-year-old bottled maybe like 6 years ago, and I just went, right, I have them. I'm quite confident in how good that's going to be. And you know, consistency. I mean, this is one thing about the Diageo distilleries and all these big producers. They're very consistent, so you can sort of tread with confidence if you see a
yeah.
name you like. But I've got the new Daoyun from Cadenheads, which is finished in a wine cask, but I haven't opened it yet, so I'm quite intrigued by that.
Yeah, I mean, it was yourself that put me on to Dalian in general, to be honest, and it was probably this bottle that I've seen you kind of, not going to say promote, but speak so highly of. So I think that's what started me off in a kind of Dalian craze. I thought, well, if it's good enough for Jason, but yeah, no. So I decided to take the plunge with that Dalian, that bottle.
Best. It's the best way. I mean, I'll give you an example. I met Andy Ardbaggy today, legendary Ardbeg collector. Whiskies, fantastic whiskies, really old stuff. And me and him, probably when we're together in Speyside or Campbelltown, we will just love sitting down with a Tormore or Glenkeith. We're fortunate we have got an array of things we can pick from, but we just gravitate to these distilleries because we know they're just really enjoyable and a good distillate. So, uh, I think, I mean, we could look back to influences and people being, I call it the bling, they love holding it in the tumbler and the ice and being seen with a certain whiskey, not exactly actually enjoying it, which is a different thing. But these are whiskies you can enjoy and they're priced to enjoy, I think.
Yeah, like I said, that Dalian was purchased on the back of you, and then after that, I realised, I mean, this Dalian's went down fantastic. And I'm struggling to finish it because, well, I'm not wanting to drink it too much. I keep finding myself like, oh, what will I have tonight? I'll go for the Style Ewan,
Yeah.
and I try not to
Some
because,
some nights you don't want peat, you don't want sherry, you just want a really good whiskey you can enjoy probably without too much thought or trying
yeah,
to get your head around it. And I think that these are distilleries that produce to blends in a certain style because they are so approachable and engaging. So I mean, if you get let out of Falkirk, get into Fife, I'll certainly feed you some Daoyuan because I've got a couple of bottles open, but I don't venture into Falkirk. I value my car, to be fair, so we'll
Yeah,
keep our
you,
distance.
you beat me there. You beat me there. I was going to say the same about my tires and stuff.
But no,
Yeah,
it's cool. Yeah, I mean, people probably thinking, what is Daoyuan, where is it and stuff, but there is a lot of it around. So jump in, I say, and check it out.
yeah. I think if there's any from the tonight, what I've got, so I've got Balmainac, Dalu, and Glen Elgin that I'm trying, and another one that will be getting opened. But yeah, the ones that I've got here, probably Dallions and Glen Elgin are the ones that I would try and advocate most. I've got Ben Rinnes, and I do enjoy a Ben Rinnes, but like I've previously said, this is an old malt cask, 18-year-old. I got this for really cheap from a shop in Dice, Cost Cutter in Dice. He's got an amazing whiskey collection. I don't know if you've ever been up that way, but this was quite cheap. So I took the plunge, and every dram I've had has been 1 minute I've enjoyed it, the next I've not, next dram I've not, and it's kind of been a love hate relationship with this one. So I'm still struggling to decide whether or not I like this, but I'm not that far down the bottle, so I'm not going to create an opinion yet. But it's a bit of a roller coaster so far.
No, I mean, it's great old range, old malt cask. It's still out there, but you just overlook it. So they're all bottled at 50%. So I've had some cracking ones and relatively good quality. But Ben Nevis is great. But as you say, people are switched on to it now. And you are going to have to chase a little bit for the young stuff, or even the 96s and the 97s that appear now and again, which are getting ever increasingly expensive. Which to me, I look at, I've got an option to buy, say, a £300 Clynelish or a Ben Nevis. I know it'll be great. It's that era. Or I can go and buy 4 bottles of Dow Ewan or something else or Inchgour and have the same amount of enjoyment and satisfaction over a longer period and not feel guilty about drinking a £300 whiskey. I'll go with that option anytime.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that kind of when I was first starting, and it's maybe good for new drinkers, people new into whiskey. If there is anybody in the chat that hasn't touched whiskey yet, or think about touching whiskey, but I think like one of my biggest downfalls was like I touched on it was going for these bigger brands, these more expensive brands, thinking like the more I pay, the better it'll be. And like I said, I was burnt once too many times to realise. Then I realised and got on to independent bottles, got on to distilleries that
Yeah.
weren't as well known, and I just found so much more enjoyment out of these than trying to enjoy King Alexander III from Dalmore, which will always stick in my head and it haunts me at night, keeps me up at night, because I think that was over £100. I think it was about 115 that I paid for it, which isn't a lot really for some other whiskies, but for that whiskey and that enjoyment that I got out of it, it wasn't worth anything near that.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe £50. It was all packaging you're paying for an old story.
You're paying, I mean, it's the expectation. This is why these companies at that official range will spend so much money on marketing, because they're creating that image and that brand. People think Balvenie, Glenfiddich, Macallan, they think luxury quality the best. Probably
Yep.
most of us here think something different when we hear those names. So that's where the marketing and the budget goes, and the whole influencer and brand ambassador thing. Or then you've got these other distilleries which probably don't have a brand ambassador between them, and the independents are. Most of the independents are driven by trying to bottle good stuff. I would take issue probably with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society on some of their releases, but they're you know, it's their reputation, like the Watts. They're not going to try and bottle a Duff cask. Same McCaden's. I'm looking at here, Chalton's here, and Signatory.
Yeah.
It's their name that's on the label, so they're going to try and do their best. So, uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I get you about Dalmore. Dalmore's a beautiful distillery. It's got a real fantastic history. It's unfortunate at the moment that Richard Patterson has a certain style, and he has, to be fair, it's been hugely successful for them. We don't like Dalmore, but you know, it sells, and so they'll just continue with that style. I'd love to see a little bit more variation. I'd love to see just give us more of a naked, straightforward down more. Um, I think they did one actually at the distillery as an exclusive bourbon cask, which I never got round to, but just give us more of a natural presentation. The same for Jura, the same for the other distilleries they own. Same for Auchentoshan, which you mentioned is just terribly presented, I think, most of the time. Um, and I think the issue for me is, as you say, about new people coming into whiskey. They'll start with the blends, they'll move into the official big names, and then after that, this is where I think the official big names fall down because, if you're wanting a cast strength, more natural presentation, you're done with the official ranges. You're wanting to move into the independent sphere, and you're wanting to get more of, I guess, that geekiness. You're really getting into whiskey, but you're not going to look back. I'm not going to
Yeah,
buy a bottle of Glenfiddich 12 or Jura 10, God help me, because there's no interest in it there for me. I know what it's like unless somebody says this is a great batch, and then you think, okay, fair enough. The independence is where it's at, and
yeah,
I think Diageo need to wake up a bit. They've got all these fantastic distilleries. Yeah, you can bottle a distillery exclusive now at a lot of places, but it's still overpriced. It's still not natural. So it's just need to get think a bit more about this. You can knock up the Johnny Walker Centre and do whatever you want in Edinburgh and the glitzy glamour of Princess Street and try and erase history when it comes to Kilmarnock and all these things, but just give us more naturally presented whiskey that's affordable.
yeah,
Um, and that way you'll retain a lot of these people who are looking to move on into that realm. And I think that's a bit of a shortcoming from the big boys. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's the independents. We've got so many in Scotland now. It's fantastic, and across the world, because people really want to try these things and they know the official route's not there.
yeah. You've also mentioned the what whiskey, and it's one that I've not taken the plunge with yet because I've got my kind of my familiars. I've got the Cadenheads, Carnmore, uh, but yeah, I probably should take a plunge with them because obviously being a relatively new independent bottler, I'm not going to try and pull the wool over our eyes.
No,
But yeah,
it's choice, isn't it? I mean, North Star is another great one. I probably haven't got enough North Star because your money only goes so far. And it's, you can't go out and buy every release by your favorite independents. You have to pick and mix. I mean, like for instance, North Star are going to be doing, I think it probably landed in the next week. They're going to be doing an Ardnamurchan. They're going to be doing a Dalwhinnie, which I'd love to get because I cannot remember the last time I saw an independent Dalwhinnie. It just doesn't exist. So that would be great. So they're doing some great stuff. And it's really exciting for us as consumers because there's something there for everybody. But yeah, there's definitely some out there that get overlooked.
yeah.
And you
I
mentioned
mean
Lady of the
Dalwhinnie's
Glen.
a yeah.
Mm.
Sorry, I was just going to say Dalwhinnie's a great one. I mean, I don't know if it would be classed as an overlooked distillery. It probably would. I mean, what they got their core range, Winter's Gold or something like that. Is it the 15 they do or the 12 or something? But Dalwhinnie's never one that I hear anyone rave about or anyone speak about. And like you said, I've never seen it. I can't remember ever seeing an independent bottled Dalwhinnie. So Dalwhinnie's probably, for me at this moment in time in my head, probably the most underrated whiskey I can think of.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
just
think
not
of.
there.
I don't think
I
there's
mean,
any fans of Dalwhinnie.
there's not me. I mean, whenever I go north, the only thing I use Dalwhinnie for is to the toilets because it's midway and you can pull over and nip in at the distillery. Um, the actual shop, the staff are lovely. The tour's nice, although they really don't keep much of the whiskey on site to mature.
Right.
But the actual, you'll end up walking out with maybe a Kleinlich 14 or something because you
Yeah.
just know what Dalwhinnie's like. And it's a shame because I think they do some good stuff, but what is it? You're going to spend £300-400 on this, one of the special releases they do annually? Not really. I just want a really good natural Dalwhinnie. So I'm intrigued by that. And I know it
Yeah.
produces good whiskey because I've had independent bottlings in the past. And I was fortunate to have a 1950s Dalwhinnie in Rotterdam a couple of years ago. It's there. You've got worm tubs. They're at higher altitude. They've got so much interesting features to go with. But what's shipped out, again, it sells, but it's just doesn't. There's not enough there to hold your interest long term.
No. Just going to dive into the chat again, see what some people are saying. So What Frank is saying, an overlooked distillery is Linkwood. Yeah, I would agree with Linkwood being a bit overlooked. Although I think we're getting a lot more from independent bottlers. You're seeing a lot of outruns coming from different producers or different independent bottlers, and they are putting Linkwood in there. So you had a whiskey from Alexander Murray, a bottle of their 19-year-old, and it's one of the best whiskey I've had. That's good to know. I'll keep an eye out on the options. Multi Haggis, who is Matt, he says, "Where's the Ardmore at?" Matt's a huge Ardmore fan. Like I said, I think I touched on it. I've tried Ardmore, and it's just one that I can't really seem to get into. But Matt always
Yeah,
tells me like Ardmore is where it's at.
it is. I mean, I'm going to announce my first online tasting next week, which is
Ooh,
Boremore, which will probably hopefully sell it pretty quick. But then the next one I've got in my head because I've got the bottles is in December, and it's going to be Ardmore, because I've got some great independent bottlings of Ardmore, and when it gets into that later teens, early 20s, it becomes a different spirit. The peat steps back. It comes really fruity. I think if you like Ben Nevis, you'll like Ardmore. But it's all about having the right one.
yeah,
You just got to try. So definitely a big fan of Ardmore, and again, another fantastic distillery with a history that totally overlooked. And is it Beam Suntory own them now? They really just don't support that distillery in terms of a really good official range, and yet it's the whiskey's there,
yeah,
which is great for us as consumers because we know, as much as I dislike some of the malt society bottlings, they bottle Ardmore on a regular basis, and generally they're like the Kalilas, just rock solid consistency. And people just again just don't think of Ardmore because it's not on Isla. If Ardmore was on Isla, people would
yeah,
be going mad for it.
yeah. Willie here saying minor slash off the radar indie refill bourbon slash hoggy matured Speyside are my go-to. It must be said. So yeah, Speyside and a refill hoggy. Yeah, I do enjoy a refill hoggy. What are your thoughts on Tomatin? So I was going to mention Tomatin, but for some reason, well, first off, I don't think it's overlooked by myself. I've got the Tomatin Legacy, big advocate of that. Will probably always have a bottle of that, like our Big Ten. I also
Gee.
covered the Tomatin series that Aberdeen Whiskey released. They done a trio of casks, and they were quite fantastic. And I did mention earlier about Fettercare and having a 22-year-old that was £100 more than Tomatin's 30-year-old. So I don't think I'll overlook Tomatin. I think Tomatin is there, but I'm not sure if it's a marketing thing um, with regards to other people, with regards to other consumers. But I know if we look at Roy and things he's done at Gravities, things he's done with Tomatin in general, I think Tomatin's getting a lot of track and a lot of coverage from kind of YouTube and maybe just the community in general, because people see that Roy is drinking it, that Roy enjoys it, that Roy's an advocate of it, so it kind of gains a bit of traction that way. I
Influencer.
don't know. Yeah, I didn't want to say influencer, but I don't know what your
He
thoughts are
is. He
on
is.
Tomatin.
But I mean, I drive past Tomatin every time I go north to see the folks, and I mean, I really like Tomatin. It's unique history. It's an enclosed site. It was once probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest distillery in Scotland. I think it had 27 stills, and the cottages around. It's almost like its own little world, and there's some fantastic Tomatins out there. That's another one I'm going to do a tasting of because I've got the 70s Tomatin. You've got like an old big tea bottle in. I've got some really good independent bottles of Tomatin, and of course the handfills they do at the distillery are really good. Maybe going up in price a little, but not compared to most places. So I really like it. It's got character. It's got punch. It's got, it is a Highland whiskey. It's probably not like some of the Speyside ones we've mentioned, which are a little bit more accessible.
Yeah,
Tomato maybe a little bit more rough around the edges, like Ben Nevis. It's got a certain character, but I really like it. It just,
yeah,
you probably don't see as much as it bottled independently at the moment, but they do have quite a sizable range officially. Prices again are going up, but I mean that's the same of everywhere, isn't it? But I really like it, and I'll
yeah.
often have a handful in the house.
I feel like with the handful, and I feel like also there's I'm getting annoyed by the cat. I feel like there's a lot of exclusives or shop exclusives, like things like that. Especially Aberdeen Whiskey Shop. I think Abbey, is it Abbey Whiskies or Nichols and Birch or one of them. had that as well. But I think there's a lot of casks going to shops, bottling for the shops. Another one here is what's our thoughts on Altmore? So I've tried Altmore, enjoy it, but I've only got one bottle of it, which is a Duncan Taylor Octave, which was gifted to me. The Duncan Taylor Octaves themselves are very pricey and stupidly priced, but this is I can't deny it's a nice whiskey. It's a good whiskey, but I don't think it's worth the price. But it's got me intrigued in more Altmore for sure. I don't know what you think about Altmore, Jason.
Yeah, it's another character-filled whiskey. It's probably not the best presented officially, because it was all part of that last Great Malts range where the prices were a little bit bonkers. I think it's a 12. I've got it in the cupboard, and that's a bottle I've had open for a couple of years, and occasionally you'll get it out and have a drink and then put it back again and forget about it for 10, 12 months. Yeah, I like it like a bit like Craig Ellicky as well. I think it does have a certain style and substance, but just again, you're just searching for the really good single cask of it that wins you over. So yeah, definitely not a bad whiskey whatsoever. One that can do better and just need to dig a bit more into.
So yeah, Bart's saying an indie Dal Winnie, whew. Willie's not spending 300 or 400 on anything, fair enough. You got to have
Exactly.
your limits. Yeah, you got to have your limits. James is asking what Jason's site called. I'll sub to him too. So Jason's Whiskey Rover on Instagram, and he also runs a Glenvore page on
Oh
Instagram,
yeah.
and he's got a website and a Facebook page if you want to follow that, and if you're interested in Glenvore. A lot of good informative things on those pages. A lot of history there if you want to check out that. Willie, big up for tomatoes, big T. I'm not
Hmm.
sure what that means, but yeah, I might be missing something.
Big T's their blend, so you can get it in the
Right.
distillery, but traditionally I think it goes back to the 50s, 60s, 70s. So yeah, I'll definitely be featuring that in a tomato tasting because it's just a nice introductory blend to what they did. So yeah, you can still you don't really see it much around Scotland, but you do get it at the distillery. I think it's more export now.
Right. Yeah, so just me being ill-informed. And Bart saying opening a Glencadam 8 for AD Rattery overlooked. Yeah, I think I don't know about AD Rattery, but AD Rattery, what they've been releasing recently, their outruns have been quite good. And I think Glencadam, I don't know the correct pronunciation, but I think it's a distillery that's overlooked, and it's definitely overlooked by me. I know their 10's supposed to be fantastic, but I've never purchased it, and it's not one. I don't think I've got one in my collection or selection, and I don't think I've had one recently. I think the last time I had a Glencadam must have been at a show.
I think it's a really, really good example of an older traditional distillery that's not been abused by modernized expansion. It's very natural. It's a very Highland rugged spirit. It's got real character and real fruits. So Glencadam's great. They've got a really good range, and I think still relatively affordable. So definitely worth checking out more Glencadam. Me as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a downside of mine. Like I've got a whiskey chat, a group chat on WhatsApp, and everybody's saying about Glencadam how great it is, but I never find myself buying a bottle or taking their word,
There's
but
just
I
so
should
much
because
stuff, isn't it? There's
uh,
until we can all get back together and somebody can bring 10 bottles, or you just sit down and try things. You can't get it all, so some people try, but just enjoy what's in front of you and what you're pouring and what you've got open in the house at that time.
um, what I'm going to do now is I was thinking about doing a quiz later. If you need to go at some point, Jason, that's fine. If not, it's fine. You can stay for the quiz. But I was going to do a quiz, try and do a quiz. And if people want to do a quiz, we can do a quiz. But it was just a kind of last minute thought. But what I was going to do now is open a bottle another bottle once again that you influenced me to buy, Jason.
Oh, geez.
It was from your review on
Jura
malt.
Seven
I've
Woods.
seen it. Yeah, the Jura 7 wood, that's it. So I'm deciding to open that tonight, this big occasion.
Don't
But
mention the
no,
M
it's
word, it's a bad word, so let's
I
see
know,
what
I
it
know,
is.
I know. It's this bad boy,
Oh,
the Tormore 28-year-old
you
from
know, I
Dornoch.
was the victim of my own review. I never got a bottle of that because the I think the server crashed. You know, like normally you could walk into the store at any time and buy a Tormore, but for some reason it was just nuts that bottling. 28-year-old is it?
Yes.
I think, yeah. So Angus at the Sponge has just released a 31-year-old, I think, for about 225, which I'm tempted by, but again, it's just that leap of faith, isn't it? You can't have everything. But
Yeah.
I thought that's a great bottling, a great pick. And I think Phil and Simon, they're really cool. They speak to me occasionally. They ask me, do you think this price is reasonable for a 28-year-old Tormore? And I said, yeah, that's a reasonable price. I mean, that's how much they care about having good
Yeah.
pricing for people. And I think should I say this? Oh, what the hell I'll say it. They bought the sister cask because that sold so quickly. They bought the sister cask of that release. So there will be another Tormore coming.
Official
We'll
scoop.
wait and see when. But I think it's great. People have cracked it open. I've seen and they've enjoyed it. And you think wonderful. There's a distillery 5 years ago nobody gave a damn about, and it's
Yeah.
doing good stuff. It just takes a bit longer till it reaches its. Not every distillery is like Ben Nevis, almost out of off the spirit, still tasting great. Tormore
Yeah.
takes a bit of time, but when it's there, yeah, really enjoyable.
Well, I was going to open it and let it sit for a while, but if you missed out on a bottle, I'll give you it for £500. I mean, I think that's reasonable
Uh,
if you really want a bottle.
well, as you mentioned, I'm all about Glenvore now when it comes to these prices.
Yeah.
So everything. I mean, it's opportunity cost. You think this bottle costs this, but actually, the reality
Yeah.
is you buying that bottle isn't that cost. It's what you're missing out on buying. So I'll pass on your 500. Thank you.
Well, yeah, it's funny with this bottle you mentioned. So I missed out on this originally. I thought it was a bit much to buy it, and it was. I can't remember how much it was priced, but it was a little bit pricey. But I trusted obviously your review of it, and I thought, why not? But then when I went to go and buy it, I couldn't find the bottle. It was nowhere. I was like, all right, fine, that's fine. And then I think I was looking on Good Spirits Company in Glasgow, just looking on their site, and I saw Tormore, 28-year-old. They had the wrong ABV up, but it was a Dornoch release, the official release. But they didn't have a picture either. So this was up here for a good couple hours or something before I took the plunge. I don't know if it was because it didn't have a picture up and because it had the wrong ABV stated on the site, but it was well, it's the same one. So I was very fortunate, and I think it must have just been fate, the destiny wanted me to have a bottle of it. So
There you go. I think it's our first Tormore, so it's definitely the one.
yeah, I'll let this sit for a while as well, and I'll move on to a Glen Elgin, which is sherry, and I'll let that sit for a little
Good
bit to
stuff.
open up. So
It's
I'm on
good
to
to see
this
some
next.
bottles getting opened. It's always nice.
Aye, it's always an experience, a pleasure. So I got this Glen Elgin 11-year-old. Had quite a bit of it. Like I said, I really enjoy this as well. What are you on at the moment?
I'm on a Ben Rinnes private cask, a 13-year-old from 2007, bottled last year. Really, really nice, spicy, tangy Ben Rinnes. I was given that as a gift. The label says to friends, so it was given
Right.
to friends for free, and
Oh, really?
yep, which was a great gesture. And then I actually thought, well, I tried it, and I thought, have you got another one? Yeah. How much? And it was like 40, 45 pounds. So I've got a spare. I
Oh,
just
that's
really
good.
liked it. So yeah. So there's a lot of good whiskey out there at good prices. You just need to know where to look sometime.
Well, Helen Hamish has got me excited for the Tour anyway, if I wasn't excited for it enough. He says, I enjoyed the drama that last weekend brought. I wonder, were you up at the distillery at the castle, or have you got a bottle, Hamish? And Bart says, well, there goes half your bottle, Stu. So, yeah, Bart's led me on to a great point that I've completely overlooked, and I don't know how I forgot it, but is Stosha, or Stosha, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, uh, the overpeated or highly peated Bunnahabhain. Uh, I think that's a really underrated or overlooked whiskey at the moment. And everyone I've had from it, even though it's been high ABV, really highly peated, and really young whiskey, they've been fantastic. buttery, creamy, like popcorn, melted butter, and they are very. I know you don't like the word, but they're very smooth, very easy to drink, and they just go down perfectly. But I think that's a very overlooked distillery. And what Bart was saying is Stevie and I had a Carnmore tasting with Kinnaird Head whiskies, and we bought a bottle, or I bought a bottle of Stosha. I think it was, I can't remember the bottler. It might have been Signatory. We bought it at Drinkmonger, brought it back to the pod that we were staying in. We done our tasting, and then we cracked open this Stosha, and we had half the bottle within, I don't know, 2 hours or something. Stupid, absolutely stupid, but it was so easy to drink, and it was just going down so well, and we enjoyed it so much. So yeah, another overlooked distillery. I'm not sure if you've got anything to say on it.
Well, I mean, that's what whiskey's about. Just you've said there, it's about sharing and a collective experience and enjoying it. So, Stosha, I actually have a Carnmore upstairs, a Stosha from about years ago, maybe. So it's one I put aside. I'll need to go back to again. But I like Buna. It's good quality. Yeah. So you're on what are you on just now? The Tormore, are you?
I'm no, I'm on the. I'm letting the Tormore sit for a bit. I'm on the Glen Elgin,
All
the
right, cool,
11-year-old.
cool. So, you know what your pal was saying there about bottles getting away. That's life,
Yeah.
the whole thing is, people can beat themselves up about getting a bottle or pay over the odds somewhere on the whiskey barrel or somewhere. But you know what? There's going to be another release, you know, next week, the week after you're going to be interested in. So just bide your time. So there's plenty Tormore out there. It's all coming. No way can have all of them. But I mean, when we stayed at the cottage on the distillery, we got all the official bottlings going back to the very first one from the 1970s, I think. We lined them all up and we just sat there and we had a great time. And then we threatened the distillery, which wasn't open for tours, that we would, because we were staying on site on a cottage, we would tour the distillery ourselves unless they invited us in, and they did. So that worked, and we just left the workers there some nice drams. So really cool place. Beautiful distillery. Unfortunately, I think they get a lot of people coming in and thinking it's open because it's the first one you see, and they have to turn people out of the car park. But I think they should really do something about that because people are really genuinely interested in it now.
Yeah, because I was that was one of the things, was the label itself of the Dornoch one. Um, I was Googling and I saw that they actually had some of them. I don't know if they still have them, but the trees cut out in front
They
of the
do.
distillery, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they've got some ornamental gardens. The original thing was it was built by an American Canadian company, and they just had this total. It's almost like the Walt Disney of distilleries. They had a clock, which I don't know if it's not fully functioning. It probably still tells the time, but it would play almost like a cuckoo clock. It would play certain different tunes every 15 minutes. The front of the distillery's got this concrete area.
Yep.
And the original vision for that was they were actually going to have an ice rink there, so you could go skating or do curling or something like that. So it's very unique. When you go inside, it's more like a cathedral. They had an old village hall there. They've got these almost workers' cottages, which it's a beautiful, beautiful little setting. And I can
Sounds
see
like a
why
place I need to
people.
visit.
Yeah, but you can, you'll just pull up alongside it. You can't get into it unless it's maybe open for the Speyside Festival, but
Right.
I'd recommend it. And yeah, it's just one of those distilleries, again, like you're saying, it's totally overlooked, but people are, getting into it.
Did you? I've just got a signal issue. I'm not sure if you can still hear me, but my computer's just came
Yeah.
up with a signal issue. Did you hear, or did you get to try at all the Tormore from Carnmore? It was the peated cask.
No, but I tell you, I don't know how many people direct message me about it to say, "Have you seen this?" So I appreciate it. I think there had been a peated one a couple years beforehand, which got snapped up. So I haven't tried it. I didn't mind the one from a few years prior. Again, just got away. I'm not going to kick myself up about it. I'm quite relaxed about these things. You could probably get it on the auctions pretty reasonably because people, I think you could probably still get it at retail if you shopped around. So
Yeah.
no, I didn't. And you can't have everything. So I just didn't borrow it at all.
because we had it in. I bought a bottle before having a taste, and then we had it in the like I said, the Kinnaird Head whiskies Carnmore tasting, and it was really interesting. I thought kind of like burnt toast with butter on it, smothered in butter, like proper
Okay.
black burnt toast. It wasn't too peated, I felt, but more kind of like a char element rather than a peat.
Hmm.
I felt like the peat was quite subtle, but I think it worked really well. Um, sorry, Highland Hamish is just saying about his donut tasting was arranged by the malt room in Inverness. Couldn't attend in person, so he got a takeaway alternative. Ate amazing Thompson Drams. Still got the Lefroy 18 this weekend.
Yeah, it was a great event on paper, and was it Murray that organised it? I think with the malt room there. There was a charity element to that ticket, so he gave me the proceeds of that, and that went into the pot for the Doddy Weir money we raised last week, to over £1,600. So that thanks to him and everybody that bought a ticket for that Thompson Brothers tasting, because that's gone to the Doddy Weir charity. So good to give back a little, but I think that I'm lucky. I've known them for a few years, but you can just sit down and engage with them, and they're just everyday whiskey geeks that now find themselves running a distillery and their own independent bottling label, which is doing really well. So it's really good to see and rewarding. And they just thank goodness I didn't start collecting their releases. Much prefer drinking them because they're coming thick and fast, but they are still hugely popular.
Yeah, I think my only gripe with them is that it seems to be a lot of them coming out. Every so often, I'm getting a kind of subscription email regarding their new ballot, and there's a lot of releases. But yeah, they do good stuff. I've had quite a few bottles from them. I'm still really enjoying the Campbelltown blends from them, the one with the ramen on them. I think
Yeah,
they're fantastic bottles.
I think they're great. I mean, it's their name on the label, and they do take it seriously, and they want to release good stuff that's affordable, so it's quite refreshing. And in a way, I think that the success of the independent label will support their distillery plans, what they want to do. So, unfortunately, if you've been to Dornick Distillery, the output is so small, maybe a barrel a week or something. So it's very hard to get hold of. And yeah, just hopefully we can get more of that whiskey into people's hands as and when. But I think the good thing about Thompson is they're bottling a range of distilleries. They're not just going after the big names because they probably can't afford to pay X amount of
Yeah.
money for a Tormore cask. But they can bottle all these other interesting smaller names, which they know will be really good and people will enjoy.
George is just asking what Chortland is that you've got there.
That's the Tom and Tool. So I pulled that one because that's a very overlooked distillery. Sherry, I think that was bottled a couple of years ago. One of 455 bottles, 57.6%. And I don't think it was particularly expensive. But people didn't snap it up because it was a Tom and Tool. That's their decision. But I'm quite intrigued to try these things, and part of you thinks there's got to be, every distillery has its day. You've just got to find it. And some of us will search high and low for a good Jura. But we'll just keep going until we find one. And same for Tom and Tool and Dalmore and all the others. You really want to have that bottle which you think, finally, I've found something worthwhile.
It's interesting because we, Mark and I, who'd been in the chat and I've mentioned before about drinking at the pot still, we're just at the pot still the other day, and Tom and Toll was one of the distilleries we discussed, and he was saying he doesn't think he's ever had a good Tom and Toll, but I really enjoyed the 16-year-old, the actual official bottling from them. But I would agree it's quite an overlooked distillery. But yeah, I don't think there's been an independent bottling that I've had from Tom and Toll. I've never had an IB from them.
The Carden Heads have done a couple. I think one of them was a warehouse bottling, and they tend to kick off their warehouse bottlings for a while with a Tom and Tool, and just good ex-bourbon cask, nothing, a young teenage whiskey, perfectly, entertaining, good stuff. You would have enjoyed that one, but Maybe we can see more Tom and Tool. But I like this. I've slowly been making it last, but uh,
Yeah.
I'm quite quite happy with it. Unfortunately, if it's got a sherry cask involved, you can pay through the nose for some distilleries, but I'm much happier, you know, something like Tom and Tool, see how it works out in sherry.
Uh, well, I think what are you on now? Are you on the Tom and Tilda now?
Yes, I am.
Because I think that's possibly long enough the tour more. So I've still got a little bit of the Glen Elgin left.
Mhm.
So I think I'll finish that and then possibly try and start this quiz. I mean, there's only 23 people watching, which is still I still enjoy 23 people watching because I really do enjoy the smaller numbers and being able to interact with people and interact with the chat.
Well,
So
yeah,
Bart,
I think you're right.
sorry.
Oops, Bart.
Yeah, it was just I like the kind of element of being a little bit closer and being able to get these questions and things like
Um, I've had quite a few wolf burns. I have to say, consistently disappointing. Apparently, they're really nice at the distillery, are really engaging, friendly, but what they're producing, it might be a bit like Tormore. It might just need longer, but I think they're a victim of bottling young, and maybe bottling too many things. Maybe they've got bills to pay, but I have to say, consistently disappointing. The only wolf burn I've had, which fills me with a little bit of hope, funnily enough, was for the Dornoch Whiskey Bar. They have a club there, and they bottled a single cask. I think it was 4 years old, wolf burn, peated, uh, and that was really good. And you actually thought, right, well, maybe this is the wolf burn style that they need to do more of. But as of yet, I think as well the guys at Dornoch probably struggled to sell that exclusive bottling because it's wolf burn, because people are just so deflated by Wolfburn, unfortunately. Annandale, really, really good. But I have to say, that's the one with the Man of Swords and all that, isn't it?
that.
A bit overpriced. Cardenheads did a 6-year-old Annandale maybe 3 months ago, which sold out because it was ridiculously priced, like £55 compared to the official stuff. That was a really, really good whiskey. I would have scored that quite highly. But again, it's trying to get them because most of the people who probably bought it for not drinking.
Yeah. I mean, I think I recently had Ardnamurchan. I can't remember which one. I think it was the second release or the third release. Stevie opened that blind. I didn't know what it was, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic for a new
Yeah,
distillery up and coming. I think what they've got and what they're achieving already really shows they're going to be a kind of forerunner. I feel for the
definitely.
drinkers
And
at least.
to answer Bart's first part of his question, it might be a bit biased, but I've been a cask owner and funder of them since day one. The Dornoch Distillery will be the best sort of small craft distillery, whatever you want to say. Their debut release, inaugural release, which was in a sherry cask. Here's a little distillery, hands on, guys who are geeky, producing what they want to drink. I mean, it blew most 3-year-olds I've had from other distilleries, which are much bigger and more corporate and in blue bottles, out of the water. And I know my cask is just gone 4 years in July, and I think it's really, really good. So I would think Dornoch is, but I think the problem with Dornoch is just the small output, a bit like Daphne to a certain extent, but even more restricted. How do you get that to drinkers? That's going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah, I mean, their inaugural release was very hard to get a hold of, extremely
Yeah.
hard. I'm assuming the obviously Daphne was the same, but
Yeah,
yeah, it'll be
Daphne
interesting to see
was.
what they're coming out with.
Yeah, I've still got my Dornoch inaugural release, and I was waiting on the second my cask because my cask is number two. The inaugural's obviously cask number one, and maybe try and get a couple of the other private casks, and then we could have like a brilliant tasting of the first 5 casks or whatever. Um, that would be really, really interesting to do. But it's it's part of the motivation for opening things and trying to do tastings. And you can write about whiskey, but I want to do a bit more and be more proactive about getting whiskey into people's hands. Or you mentioned Whiskey Bond, when I bump into him, he's so enthusiastic about whiskey and knowledge, and you know, just putting whiskey into people's hands and just seeing their reaction is, priceless to me.
Yeah, I mean, one comment I'll put on Mark with his enthusiasm for getting whiskies. We went out the other day in Glasgow to go to the pot still. Well, we didn't just go to the pot still. We went out for a meet up because I think we're picking up bottles from the auction, and then we went to the pot still. But he had bought a sample, just one sample for someone, and he said he was adamant in getting it to him. Ryan, who was in the chat earlier, he was working, and he was saying, "Oh, I've messaged him. He's not replied. He's not replying." And I said, "Do you want me to phone him for you? Like, I'll phone him. I'll look like the kind of nagging person. I'll phone him." He's like, "Aye, go and phone him." So we phoned him, and he got the sample into his hand because he was that enthusiastic about letting Ryan have the sample and letting him try it. So yeah, he's really good for sharing whiskies for sure. Getting people.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I helped him out. I think there was a Carden Heads sherry bomb that he was looking for, and he couldn't get a hold of it. And I knew I had it in the shop. Says, right, have mine. I'll send it to you. Just it's all up. I bend over backwards like he will to get whiskies to people who want to drink them, like that Tormore you've got there,
Yeah.
because that's what it's about. I mean, I'm not going to help somebody or do someone a favor if they're just going to take that bottle and try and make a couple £100 or whatever on it. That's not what it's about at all. So what are you thinking of
Um,
it then?
I've still not had it. I'm about to.
Oh,
I'm very. I want to make sure I'm leaving it enough time to breathe and give it enough time to appreciate it. But Cresimir's in. It's good to see you, Cresimir. Thanks for joining. Yeah, everybody's got to work, make that dollar, make that money for more whiskey. James Lindors was the only first release he could get his hands off. Kudos to them. Yeah, well done getting hold of your hands on it. Hopefully you've cracked it and hopefully it's enjoyable. Mark's just saying, are you talking about the same person? Ryan's saying Mark's a very good bloke. Yes, he is. Ryan's the one they gave the sample to. And Matt saying top man. Bart, who is also in our whiskey chat, is not even going to associate anything about Mark being nice. He's just asked another question by the looks of things.
I mean, I think they're probably. I mean, they are trying to produce more. They've got people on board to help. I think it's because the independent things taken off, and I think for a while initially, the gin was a real surprise to them as well. That did really well. So they're almost trying to support free fronts at the moment. I think their output was maybe a cask a week. It's if you've ever been, it's probably the size of your living room, and the fermentation, the washbacks are up above you in the ceiling. It's that small. It's absolutely tiny. And it's such a manual process they have. So I think they've got very strong links with a lot of retailers because they come from a bar background. So they'll make sure their releases get into shops and get at bars so you can have them. And I know they've got strong links to Japan if you know them as well. They've got a lot of fans in Japan. So I think it's going to be really hard to get Dornoch whiskey, but knowing those guys, they'll try their best. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be the inaugural release was 50 CL. I think that's a given. It's going to be 50 CL to try and get more to people. I wouldn't be surprised further down the line, not from them, but if we see some distilleries maybe even looking at 37.5. Carden, no, Springbank or their Springbank Society, they're going to do the next society release as a 20 CL because it's 28-year-old Springbank. So you can imagine the fight and people who would get into for that. So yeah. There's probably not a distillery Dornoch's comparable to because it is quite small. I think is it maybe 30,000 litres a year. I'll probably get told off by one of them for that, but that's off the top of my head. Because it's handcrafted and it's quite intense the way they do it, it's totally inefficient. I mean, their fermentation times could be in and up to a couple 100 hours. You're going to be paying a bit more, but I still think that inaugural release was it maybe £100 when it came out? And I've seen them go for 2,000. Yeah, it's just I think it was a really good thing if you look on the ballot system on the site, they say every the ballot's really successful because it's getting bottles into drinkers. And they said, I think when they did the inaugural release ballot, only one bottle from the ballot went to auction. All the other bottles you see at auction have been from retail. So that might be people working in shops or people who
Yeah,
managed to get one from a shop. So I think the ballot's really successful for them, and that's what they're wanting to try and, because
yeah,
when I bought on my cask, there's a couple options you can have as a cask owner. So I mean, I'm looking to do the no profit option. So all I get is X amount of bottles for saying thank you, and the rest go to them. So I'm not making any money on the cask really, and they then get to do that at ballot or something. And I would want to see as many of those bottles in people's hands who've actually got them open, because if, my God, if you sell one, I'd be furious with you because I could have done that myself and kept them all for me. So
yeah.
there you go.
I think what they've got going on with the ballot system is really good. Got a lot of time for that. Even if I'm not successful sometimes, but yeah, what they're doing there is really good. And it's
All
a
you need to
shame.
do is, yeah, open them, send them a photograph, and slowly you'll creep up their
Yeah,
their hidden chart list. I think there's 8 levels now, so I don't know which level I'm at, but you know, it's rewarding people who drink the whiskey. So it's definitely worth sending them a picture of the one you've opened. They'll say thank you, and maybe you'll nudge up, and you'll maybe when that Blair raffle comes, you'll be all over that, and you'll get it.
yeah. I'll make sure to link them this video of me opening the Tormore live, just so they definitely know it was it was opened and not photoshopped. So Bart's saying, well, that sucks, but it also means he can start a donut distillery in his living room. Uh, um, Mark's saying he's hitting a massive beamer, which means he's getting embarrassed from all the nice compliments for any views non-Scottish people, non-Glaswegian. Uh, George is saying make sure to rinse out the Tormore, maybe a lot more subtle than the Glen Elgin. Yeah, I was worried about having the sherry, the big sherry kind of first, but I've had some beer and I've had some water to try and cleanse out my palate a little bit. Kresimir says he's just realised that it's Jason, the whiskey over talking. Voice sounded familiar. I'm guessing you're listening and not watching the video. Bart, would you be willing to tell us what kind of cask you've got, Jason? And what is your original plan with it?
Yeah, the crowdfunder casks, the first round, I think, were all 55-liter Covell casks from America, so they're bourbon. I think the second round of crowdfunders, you had a bit more options. You had some sort of those smaller casks where you could get a full barrel or you could get a peated. So no, a sherried. So yeah, it's an ex-bourbon cask, which is what I prefer. So I'm happy with that. And yeah, I said my plans there will be to go down the sort of non-profit route, try and get those bottles into the hands of people who are going to open them. It's interesting because it puts me on the other side for a change. I'm not moaning about people not opening them. Here I have given up bottles and probably a lot of money to try and let people enjoy them. The other option would be I'd just take it all myself, or there is another bottling option as well. But I think a number 2 cask I was very fortunate to get, but it's their heritage, it's their whiskey. I'm just the owner, the caretaker. So I'd give it back to them and we'll see where we go. So chances are, if we ever get to have a tasting in person one of these days, probably not Falkirk because it's not safe, but
They'll steal the whiskey.
there might be a bottle of Dornoch on the table if it's bottled by then. I'm looking to bottle it this year. Just need to wait on one or two things. I think it's great. You could keep going for another because it's I don't know what the gauge level is at the moment, but you could probably go a couple more years on that Octavie type cask. But to me, it tastes good. I'm happy with the way it tastes. So that to me, that's the time to bottle it. So wait and see. But that's a whole nother topic about cask ownership and enjoyment of a cask. I mean, I knew somebody who had a Macallan cask and they bottled it at 28 years old. Macallan offered him a stupid amount of money to take the cask off them. He said, "No, I've had this cask from day one. I'm going to see it right the way through. I'm going to bottle it. I'm going to do the label. I'm going to package it the way I want. And I'll have all these bottles." And then occasionally what he used to do is drop one in auction and it would get, because it's Macallan, it would get like £600-800, if not more. and he had a lot of whiskey to enjoy himself. So he'd seen that all the way through rather than giving up the cask or handing it over to an independent. And I think that's what I'd like to do.
We've got another question, and whilst you're answering the question, I'll still be listening, but I'm just going to get more water anyway. Just so I've got some. And it is, has Jason tried anything from the Glasgow Distillery? Tried the North Star bottle and really enjoyed it. Yeah, so before you answer, we actually smelled this at the pot still, and I thought it smelled a lot like deep heat. That's all I could smell through it.
I've had some of the Glasgow stuff. I have to say I haven't been totally blown away by it. I know the bottling you're talking about, but I haven't had it. But generally, North Star, I think, are quite reliable. So I don't think that one hung around too long. So I didn't get a chance to buy it. No. But what I've had from Glasgow Distillery, I haven't really been too impressed by. I think it's been relying too much on the wood. And you get it, there's an investment. They need to bottle young. They need to get that cash flow opening. Like the Lindor's release, they managed to release maybe 40,000 of the two inaugurals that they were. Same liquid, just a different statement on the label. It was great to see so many people not making any money on them, by the way. But young, I didn't think it was that good. I didn't think it was ready, but you can appreciate why they're needing to bottle, because there's been I think that distillery's a £7-8 million initial investment for I think it's Russian owned, or some involvement with the Russians. So that's why. Glasgow, I think, didn't the Glasgow distillery even go to Hollywood? Is that right? I could be. So like all distilleries, it's going to have its day. It's going to eventually come out with something that knocks your socks off, but I don't think it's been there yet. And certainly the suggestion of a whiskey smelling like deep heat really doesn't fill me with much confidence to buy it.
Well, to be fair, deep heat for me is quite I'm not going to say a sentimental aroma, but I quite like the smell of it. Reminds me of going to football with my dad, and yeah, just playing football and that, and playing football, watching him playing football or whatever, and you smell the deep heat in the changing rooms and stuff like that. I really enjoy the smell of deep heat. So I might just be weird, but yeah.
That's a personal taste and note, isn't it? So, I know the smell deep heat, but I can tell you I've never put it in a whiskey before.
It's Glasgow Distillery in Glasgow, asking for a friend.
Well, I always say Glasgow Distillery. I have to think, because you've obviously got the Clydeside, and you've got
Side, yeah.
the Douglas Lang one, which seems to be taking an age to show up. I forget the name of that, but somebody will tell me. It's good. Glasgow's got a few. It's good. Edinburgh's got one or two as well. Oh.
You've mentioned wanting to buy a cask. What distillery, aside from BA, of course, had your interest? Yeah, so yeah, I did buy a cask, and it was Tullabarden, and it wasn't necessarily because I was heavily invested in the Tullabarden flavour or Tullabarden as a distillery. It was more because the price was right. It was the right cask, and tried it. It's a lovely. So far, it's proven lovely. So yeah, which distillery aside from VA has your interest? I'd really like to have a Ben Nevis cask. I missed out on Whiskey Broker. They had some Ben Nevis casks. But yeah, I think Ben Nevis is maybe not necessarily from a profit point of view, but for more having the bottles and that, I'm really enjoying Ben Nevis at the moment. And I think having a Ben Nevis cask would be something quite unique to own, to have, or maybe even like split. But yeah, that's what I'd say. I don't think I'd buy a Blair Athol cask. I think there's too many Blair Athols out there for me to enjoy as it is. I don't think I need a Blair Athol cask, but yeah, I like the idea of having a Ben Nevis one. I think it'd be good to have a couple bottles of them and share them out with friends and things like that.
Yeah, that's the way you get the cask, and like the person shared that friends one with me. That's the way to do it, and you can cover your costs. It's amazing how much you can bottle a whiskey for and charge for it with breaking even. So I would go with that. Sorry, you were going to say something?
It was just Mark saying Strathern. Nobody talks about them at all.
It's because they're not very good, to be fair. That's It's I mean they're owned now by Douglas Lang. I think, they originally started as a craft distillery and people got excited because you could go for the day and do a school, and they've got very old, almost like French-like shaped stills. Um, I, as much as the enthusiasm for them, I wasn't really won over. So it'll be interesting to see what Douglas Lang do with them because they probably bring their own style to it. But that debut Strathern, it's just, I've got the bottle upstairs, and I was seriously just considering pouring it down the sink. Even though it was like an £80 bottle, it's not good. It's almost like with these Glen Elgins, which are just heavily dominated by sherry. Not for me.
Um, I'm going to add a wee bit of Tormo. I'm going to add a wee bit of water to this Tormo, just to see how it is. I feel like it needs just a wee touch of water. It is quite subtle, as George said. Although I'm getting a lot of kind of, I don't know what you got. I can't remember your review now, but I feel like there's a lot of pear on it, a lot of kind of orchard fruits. But it's very interesting. It'll be good to delve into it further. But I'm not sure how I feel about it right now.
Well, as Roy would say, it's a neck pour, so yeah,
Yeah,
you'll come to enjoy it. I mean, if you're enjoying Tully Bardine, this is like a couple steps up the ladder. So I mean, you'll get there. Aye, so yeah, I mean, a Ben Nevis cast would be great, but I think a lot of people are clued up to that. So I would
yeah. I
suggest
mean,
people maybe buy the Inch Darnay, but the one they're putting out for blending, which the whiskey barrel bottled recently, that was quite impressive. And I think I can remember Whiskey Broker a couple of years ago selling those for £800 a cask. So if you just get one of them and sit on it, I think like you'll have yourself a really good whiskey in a few years' time.
um, I think I'll try the quiz. Right, this is going to be a huge gamble because I've never done a quiz before, and it requires me sharing my screen. And
Is
I've
it
only
on
got
Blair
one screen.
Athol?
Yeah, it's all on Blair Athol. You got to know everything about Blair Athol. There is a Blair Athol question in there, funny enough. But it's more to do with underrated distilleries, forgotten drams, and also what's being discussed tonight. So I'll put you out for now, Jason, and I'll bring you back in. We'll do the quiz first, see what people get, and hopefully it doesn't take too long. But
Good
we'll
luck.
hit the 1 hour. I know, thank you. We'll hit the 1 hour 40 mark. So yeah, we'll go for the quiz. Uh, one Blair Athol, two Pitlock. Yeah, Mark knows me so well. So yeah, we'll try this quiz and hopefully you can join in as well. You can see what you think and hopefully it's good. So here we go. Right, let's remove Jason. I am very nervous about this and I'm not sure how it's going to work. But here we go. It's going to be a multiple choice. I mean, it's going to be 10 questions. Nothing too hard, hopefully. Like I said, some of it's going to be on underrated whiskies, forgotten whiskies, and some of it's going to be on the things that we discussed tonight. So I hope you've been listening. So I'm just going to try and share my screen, and I've got another screen down here to hopefully keep me right. So let's do this, and I'm hoping what I'm going to need is I'm going to need the chat to tell me that my voice is still working when I share the quiz. So I've shared the quiz, and I just want to know that. Oh, wait, I think you can still see me. That's fine. Right, so it looks like you can still see me. So yeah, we'll get into this. So it's forgettable drams quiz. Um, it would be reassuring if someone commented just saying that you can see it and you can see me and hear me, but we'll go right into it anyway. So the first question is, how many casks are reportedly produced per week at Eduard? And it's A16, B18, C20, and D22. I think I got my facts off Wikipedia and also whiskey.com. I tried to get a range of different sources, so hopefully that these are right and up to date. So, how many casks are reportedly produced per week at Edradilla? And I did mention this during the stream. Oh, and I've just spilled my water. Oh, that's a lot of water. So Willie's got no idea. Jimmy Jazz went for D. Mark's went for C. Matt's went for A. Bats went for A. And Mark says he's guessing himself. Ryan's went for C. So I'll give it another couple seconds and then I'll move on. I don't think there's many people in here anyway, so it's not like a big live stream where there's thousands of people watching. Can't spill that water. Oh my god. Oh, there's a lot of water underneath me. Oh well. So I'll move on if everybody's answered. The answer is 18 casks. It's 18 casks per week at Eduard. And like I said, I'm pretty sure my sources were from Wikipedia and whiskey.com, kind of referenced from Wikipedia anyway. So the next question is, when did Annandale release their first whiskey? And once again, this was stated during the live, during the live stream. So 2015, 2016, 2017, or 2018. So Steve says B, 2016. James has got 1 out of 1. Well done, James. Mark is saying D, 2018. Bart's saying A, 2015. Ryan's saying D, 2018. We've got another D, 2018, C. And then Bart's changing his to D. Okay, I'll allow it. Now, if any of these are wrong, just know that I Googled once, I Googled twice, I Googled 3 times. So if I am wrong, then just definitely call me out. But the answer that I got, and George is saying C. So the answer that I got, and I found off Annandale as well, pretty sure it was off Annandale, and Wikipedia and Google. Jimmy's saying D. Oh, I'm maybe jumping the gun here. I don't know if you can tell how nervous I am trying to wipe the water off the floor with my sock and also try to do this quiz. So the answer is C, 2017. So I think they first filled their cask in 2014, and 2017 is when they first bottled it and released it. So hopefully I am correct, and hopefully no one's mad at me. It is all for fun, I suppose, anyway. Bart's changed his to C. Well done, Bart. You got that one right. So this should be a rather easy one. Which region does Ayrshire Bay belong to? Is it A, Lowland? Is it B, Highland? Is it C, Speyside? Or is it D, Islay? This looks like it's a bit of an easy one. So it looks like we've got a lot of votes in so far. We'll just wait in case there's any stragglers behind. I'm just going to check that my computer's still in charge because I got a warning light there. But yeah, which region does Ayrshire Bay belong to? Lowland, Highland, Speyside, or Islay? And Bart's just said he doesn't watch Aquafiti anymore because of the quiz. Well, sorry, Bart. I just thought I would try it out. So the answer is Lowland. So Ayrshire Bay is from the Lowland region. I'm quite enjoying this. Question 4. What blend does the majority of Inchgower end up in? The majority of it. And once again, I think I mentioned this during the stream. So is it A, Johnny Walker, B, J&B, C, Buchanan's, or D, Bell's? So Matt's got 1 out of 3. Steve is saying D for Bell's. Matt is also saying D, bells. I've probably lost all my viewers anyway for doing a quiz for copying Roy, copying Aquaviti. The dog looks like he needs a pee, but Bart's saying D, Mark's saying D, Willie's saying D. The majority are going with D, bells. Jimmy Jazz is saying D as well. I'm just interested to see what James says because James seems to be in the front. Yeah, Matt says drove past it plenty of times. James says D, flowed in. So we're all going with the majority, and Willie says he likes an indie Inchgower. So Willie should know. So the correct answer is, and most of you have already guessed it, I'm terrible at doing quizzes, is D, bells. The majority of Inchgower ends up in bells. Question 5. I hope you're watching. The Tormore bottle, and I made sure to show the label a couple of times. The Tormore bottle I opened earlier had what on the label? A tree-shaped still, a tree-shaped Glencairn, a tree-shaped worm tub, or a tree-shaped mash tun. Yeah. So it's a Tormore, 28-year-old, and what is on the label? A tree-shaped still, a tree-shaped Glencairn, tree-shaped worm tub, or a tree-shaped mash tun. Tree has no meaning now. I don't even know what I'm saying now. So James Morgan is pretty confident with A and a laughing face. We've got Steve M saying C. Willie's winging it here with A. Bart's saying I thought it was a gangrenous hair still. Gangrenous? Like a ginormous? Gangrenous? Yeah, alright. Bart knows big words. So the answer, of course, is if everybody's put their answers in. It's A. It's a tree shaped still. And it's got a little bird coming out of it and a little worm in the grass. I didn't want to go into too much detail. In what year? Now, this was not part of the live, but this is just not common knowledge, but this is just random whiskey knowledge, I suppose. In what year did a fire destroy Dalyun Distillery's pagoda roof? So you've got 1917, 1918, 1919, or 1920. I wonder if Jason knows this. In what year was the pagoda roof, Dalyun's distillery, destroyed by a fire? 1917, 1918, 1990, or 1920? So James Morgan's went in with 1918. Ryan's got 1917. Mark's got 1920. Matt's 1919. Bart's 1917. Willie's, he drinks whiskey, but he's no fireman. Fair enough, Willie. Steve's gone for 1920. And Willie has put his guess in at 1919. Shoot to nothing. 19 canteen. So it's all good guesses. It's a hard one. I mean, I didn't even know this until I put up the page. I think it was Dal Ewan history page. Jimmy Jazz has got D 1920. I would never know this off the top of my head. It's a good question though. Probably a good one to remember for whiskey quizzes. But the year that a fire destroyed Dal Ewan's distilleries before the roof was 1917. So well done if you got that right, because I think that's quite a tough question, quite a difficult question that. Either good guessing or good knowledge. Either or, well done if you got it right. Question 7. Oh, we're getting to the toughies now. Auchentoshan derives its name from Gaelic or Gaelic, whichever is the Scottish pronunciation. But what does it mean? And I'm not going to try and pronounce that. That looks like a cad and oisin. I'm not going to pronounce that. It's either centre of the field, edge of the field, corner of the field, or back of the field. So I think Mark has went in with corner of the field. Mark's went in quite quick, quite confident. Bart has also chosen C. Auchentoshan derives its name from Gaelic, but what does it mean? Centre of the field, edge of the field, corner of the field, or back of the field? So Jeff's saying B, edge sounds cool. Yeah, I think edge of the field sounds pretty cool. Edge of the field. Ryan said, thanks, Mark. Yeah, Mark is probably our custodian, Auchentoshan historian. It rhymes, it sounds good. James Morgan said B. Jimmy Jazz said C. And Willie's saying I should know this, but I'd have to hear the Gaelic. I think you're trying to take the mick, Willie, but it's written there. I don't think I could pronounce it. It's Akkad on Akkad and Osain. Akkad on Osain. Anyway, Willie says C, corner of the field, and James says why waste a whole field? True, why waste a whole field? Centre of the field just for the distillery. So we'll see what the answer is. Is of course corner of the field. So I don't know who's in the lead. I don't know if it's still James. I think Matt's doing pretty well. He's got quite a few right. Yeah, we're going to question 8. Which of these pistachio? Which of these Diageo distilleries has the largest output capacity? And I believe it's per year. And this is according to Wiki. I had to put in according to Wiki because this might be out of date. But I had different sources and some were saying different things. So Blair Athol at A, Dalyun at B, Glen Elgin at C, or Inchgower at D. So which of these, I keep saying it, which of these Diageo distilleries has the largest output capacity per year? Willie's went in for D, Inchgower, and so is James. Jimmy Jazz is going for D, Inchgower. Hopefully Jimmy Jazz is went for B, Dalyun. Ryan's went for B, Dalyun. Which of these which of these Diageo distilleries? Distillery and Diageo, I just keep getting it muddled up, has a large output capacity. I think it's because I'm nervous too doing this quiz. Mark's went for C as a total guess, Glen Elgin. Matt's went for D. Ryan said Monadally. Bart's went for B and Steve's went for C, Glen Elgin. So we've discussed, I believe, every single one of these distilleries, but we haven't said which has the largest output anyway. This is more of your whiskey knowledge rather than what you've heard, experience knowledge. So we'll move on to what the answer is. The answer is Dalyun. So I had 2 different sources, and one said 3.37 million for Dalyun, and one said 4.9 million, but I would say 3.37 possibly. Yeah, it's supposedly got the most. I think 2.5 million is Blair Athol, 1.99 is Glen Elgin, and 1.83 is Inchgower million. These are all Wikipedia, of course, but yeah, I had 2 different conflicting Dalyun, but they were considerably more than the others anyway. Question 9. This was mentioned. Who owns Glen Glasgow Distillery or Glen Sausage Distillery? Is it Brown-Forman, Diageo, White and Mackay, or Beam Suntory? So who owns Glen Sausage Distillery? Brown-Forman, Diageo, White and Mackay, or Beam Suntory? So Matt went in confidently with A, Brown-Forman. Jimmy Jazz as well went for A. Ryan went for A. James went for A. Tony O'Neill says, can I use a 50-50 please, Stuart? You sure can. It's either White and Mackay or Beam Suntory. Mark went for A, Bart's went for A, Steve's went for A, and Willie's went for A. So Tony O'Neill, what's your 50-50? So I hope there's a Kate Upton question in here from Bart. Yeah, this is underrated whiskies, and Kate Upton's not underrated. Tony O'Neill says, "Lol, if it's not A, I'm dead." Okay, so the correct answer to who owns Glen Sausage Distillery is Brown-Forman, of course. Yes, and Billy Walker was there previously. Now at Glen Elgin, been at Glendronach, at Glasgow, and always putting the in front of the names. So the last question. Now this is, I don't think this is a toughie. It's maybe a little bit of a toughie, but it's not been mentioned tonight. Which two expressions are official bottlings from Glen Elgin? Official bottlings. 15-year-old and a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old and a 21-year-old, 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, or a 12-year-old and an 18-year-old. Which are official bottlings from Glen Elgin Distillery? No Googling. So Bart's went for D, 12 and 18. Ryan's went for D, 12 and 18. Mark's went for D. Willie's went for C, 12 and 15. Matt has went for D, 12 and 18. Matt saying he knows one of them. James went for D as well. So a 15 and a 20, an 18 and a 21, a 12 and a 15, or a 12 and an 18. And Matt says he's guessing again because he knows one of them. So it could be a 50-50 depending on which one you know. Steve's saying D, 12 and 18. I don't know what the prize should be if you've honestly won. Maybe a high five. See if I was wanting to give out a sample of the Tormore, but it's location dependent and honesty as well. And I'm not saying I don't trust some of you, but I don't trust some of you. I'm sure this Tormore will get sent out anyway. But yeah, I think everybody's answered. That's the last question, and I'm hoping you've all answered. So, which two expressions are official bottlings from Glen Elgin? A 15-year-old and a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old and a 21-year-old, 12-year-old and 15-year-old, 12-year-old and 18-year-old. The answer is, of course, if people knew it, I didn't know this, it's a 12-year-old and 18-year-old. So Jeff's saying now you say it's for a high five, would have tried it. Yeah, you should have. You missed out on a rare whiskey wins high five. Or it could have been a whiskey bottle slap for you, Jeff. So I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully this goes back to normal. I don't know if Jason's still with us or not. He's probably left because, I mean, I've got a little bit excited with this quiz. So let's see. Oh no, he's still here. So we'll add him back, bring some proper etiquette back to the stream.
Who won?
So rough start. So rough start. So Bart says he got 0 out of 2 and then 8 out of 10. I don't know how true that is because he's a bit of a mischievous lad. Matt says he got 6 out of 10. Mark says he got 5 out of 10. Jimmy Jazz says he got 5 out of 10. And James says, let's say we're all winners. I think James done pretty well. He seemed to be doing quite well. He seemed to be the forerunner for a bit. Well, Willie, in fact, actually, Willie done really well. Willie got 11 out of 10. Yeah. can't fault him. And Ryan got 8 out of 10. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know how you done. Were you doing it or were you just
I, s-
trying to
I
ignore me?
saw the questions, and I wasn't following it entirely, but I think I probably would have been an 8 or a 9, I think. But no,
Yeah.
it was good. And I think the Dao Yun question caught people out from what I saw the production. So no, cool. Oh, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? At the end of the day. So
That's all it is. Because it was
yeah,
I didn't actually know until, like I was saying, I was doing a bit of kind of research on this, doing this live, that Dalian went on fire. I know, I think it was Glen Fiddick with the Snow Phoenix. They brought out that whiskey when the snow collapsed the roof and that, but I didn't know the Dalian went on fire.
yeah, they lost the original pagoda, which was the first in Scotland with that fire. So yeah, that's just geeky stuff you pick up when you get into whiskey. So there's plenty of it out there.
The further I've went down this tour more, it is getting a lot more palatable. I think if I was probably to have skipped the Glen Elgin or maybe even skipped the Dalian, I think because the Dalian waxiness, I think it's quite a subtle whiskey. I don't think it's anything. I mean, it's only 47.3. I don't think it's anything in your face. I think it probably takes some time. Maybe take a good a good night or two to kind of get into it. But it seems so good so far.
You'll love it when you know it's the right point. So it's waited 28 years to be open. So just take your time.
I'm glad they've opened it, and I think it was the right setting to open as well.
Ah well, it's any bottling's good setting, isn't it, to open when there's people there.
Yeah.
Definitely. But yeah, no, good to see it open because you do see a lot of them popping up on the secondary, unfortunately.
Yeah, I got to admit, I think I did have a look, but I didn't think they were doing too well
No.
in the secondary anyway. So it was quite. I feel like that's quite kind of common or off Dornoch. Their bottles don't do too well on secondary that I've seen, other than the inaugural release. But they're independent bottles. They don't go astronomical on the auction sites. They seem to be settled maybe just over or just less than the RRP.
Yeah, hopefully people wake up to it because I mean the early releases. I mean I think the 42 or is it 45-year-old Invergordon from about 3-4 years ago went for silly money. I think the best bottling I've had from them, I think, is an Arran, and it was only with a stag on it, and there was only 65 bottles maybe of that. And that's good money as well, but that's a lovely whiskey. So the early stuff's really good. Their first ever release, they is the two brothers, I think, at the bar, and they didn't. They sold them only at the bar, and
Right.
they sold out, and they didn't have enough, I think, to support the bar. So I had a bottle and I gave it back to them. So um, that's very rare. But it's not about money; it's about enjoyment. I think that's what everybody's believes in here.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, I mean, I think the people that are in here and that, we all share out samples and that. We all try and get each other to open our bottles and share the ones that we're most intrigued for. So, um, I don't think I've got much more to say. I don't know if you've got much more to say, much more to add to the forgettable drams or underrated whiskies. If there's anything you want to
Uh,
add in particular.
just just go with it. Don't be afraid. Um, if you like you say you're with groups, maybe buy one collectively, split the bottle. Shoulder the cost. Just keep trying, and don't believe the hype. That's probably what I'd say.
Uh, Last question from Bart. Bart always has the right questions. I do love Bart. Stu, now that you had a think on it, which distillery are you going to bring out of the forgotten corner? Do you usually buy a couple to really get an idea of the profile? Um, well, I think I do, and I don't. That's a very diplomatic answer, but I done my collection video recently, what I've got on the shelves, and I think I tend to buy a lot from the same either distillery or region, like say Springbank. I bought a lot of Springbank, even if it was Hazelburn, just to try, because I enjoy Springbank, but didn't really enjoy Hazelburn, and I'm still not a fan of Hazelburn, but I always try and buy some anyway to get a gauge of it. And then the same with like the Carnmore ranges. Cadenhead ranges. I was all buy these types of whiskies to get a overall impression of them.
Mhm.
But a distillery that I would try and bring out after having that Balmain 10-year-old, I think that's one to explore more. I think I'll buy another bottle, not the same one obviously, but buy a different independent bottle and see what that's like. If it's a similar standard, then I might try and kind of push that more and give that more coverage, because this Balmain so far is proven to be really like suited to my palate. Nice cash strength, oily, creamy, fruity. Uh, so yeah, I would say Balmain is one that I'm focusing my sights on at the moment. And do I usually buy a couple to really get an idea of the profile? No, I'll buy one to start with. And I suppose it's a bad thing if I say like I buy one, I'm not that impressed with it, I kind of stray away from it. But if you get samples and that, I think always like samples between people in the community is quite a good thing to build up an example of the distillery to see if you like it or not. But yeah, like I said, Balmain is one that I'm going to explore more, and I'm hoping good things from it. I don't know about you, Jason, if there's any that you think you need to bring to the audience, to the consumers, bring them to the.
Um, Not really. I think I've done enough with Tormore and Dow Ewan recently. I think, unlike yourself, I mean, Hazelburn's my favorite distillate at Springbank, but maybe, you know, it's how can you can't really showboat one of their distillates because the bottles fly off the shelves and they don't get bottled independently very often, and when they do, they're £500 or something. So I think just enjoying the whiskies. I'm quite fortunate because I've been round the map a few times. I think possibly focusing more on the newer ones. Like I said, Dornoch, really interested in what they're doing. There's other new distilleries that are coming online soon, aren't they? I think one that everybody's forgetting about is Harris. They they have whiskey, they just haven't bottled it yet. Their gin's immensely popular. I think their whiskey, because it's the same guy that does Torabeg, I think it's going to be really good. Um, I think maybe just keeping an eye on the newer ones and seeing how affordable they are when they do come out. Ardnamurchan, I think everybody's got now, so there's no point championing that
Yeah,
because it's doing it really well. And they're putting out bottles on a regular basis, which are quite affordable. What's the other one? Is it Nikian?
yeah.
I'm not huge on them. It was interesting. We spent a bit of time with them. I know the malt article was pretty dire because Mark wrote it. And I got some comments about how terrible that was, and I was like, that's nothing to
It
do
was
with me.
bad.
But yeah, it was bad being on the phone call, but I won't go there. But I think it was interesting. They're doing two styles of distillate. They're doing the current one, which is the one you're drinking, which is designed to be bottled young, and they're doing another one which is more long term. And the long term one was thick, oily, rich, much better distillate. But they've got bills to pay. They've got to bottle younger, and that's that distillate they're using now. But I think they'll be quite interesting when they step away from what we're seeing from them at the moment. Some people love them. I think even Roy really rates the bottle, but I didn't think it was very good at all personally. And despite spending time with them and hearing what they've got planned, and they're doing yeast experiments and different casks, I think all that's exciting. I just think, again, like Wolfburn, it's another distillery that's had the bottle perhaps at the wrong time. And I think
Yeah,
it's interesting. Does that damage your brand? Does people not go back to you because they've had a couple bad experiences when it probably wasn't technically at its peak? We'll have to see, but I'm always up for giving them a chance. Um, yeah, and probably not even distilleries, maybe new independent bottlers. Let's support maybe one or two of them, get really into what they're doing. So um, it's open season. We'll just see. I can't really say go buy more Glen Elgin or uh, yeah, I'll just see what happens.
yeah. I mean, I think I had the Nukian or Nikian, whatever, however you pronounce it. I don't know if it was the batch two, the batch one I had, but I wasn't very impressed with it, unfortunately. But then the ambassador, or I'm not sure what his classed as, I don't think we try and use the word ambassador, but the Matthew's name is,
Yeah.
he sent me some drams, and one of them was like a 60%. I'm not sure if it was the inaugural release or what it was, but
Yeah, that
it
was
was
that. Yeah.
it was fantastic. It was I thought it was really good. But what they bottled for the actual batches and the releases, I thought it strayed very far away from it. And just wasn't as nice. Sorry, Matt's just saying, did I not give you a sample of the recharge? Yeah, you did, and I did enjoy that, I think. But as a general rule of thumb, I'm really not that big a fan of Hazelburn. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm just not mature enough yet.
We'll sort it. Hazelburn's
Yeah,
great. And you have to get to like Hazelburn because it's probably the only one, if you visit the distillery, you've maybe got a chance of buying because everybody else just pulls the other ones. So
yeah.
it's got a lot going on. I think it's really good. Um, Although you think triple distillate and you think Auchentoshan, Hazelburn is still the same manual process, the same love and attention that they give the other two. So it's a different style of triple, I think, compared to Auchentoshan, which is more, mass produced and
Yeah.
a little bit inept.
So yeah, I think we'll end it there. Well, that's been 2 hours, just about 2 hours 15. And what have we got? Yeah, just last one before we go. I don't like missing anybody out. Currently drinking batch 7, following 4 at sip tasting. It's all right, better than the last batch I tried. I think that must be the nickname that we're on about.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
a little bit
mad to think they're on batch 7 and they
batch
only
7. Yeah,
it's
it's my same
you know
issue with
it's
Waterford and the amount of whiskies that are coming out of there. And why not just wait, give it some time, and allow it to sit? Well, here you go.
it's all about money at the end of the day,
Yeah,
regardless of the W word for wankers or whatever, it's it's money. That is what's driving a lot of these people to bottle. And I think as consumers, we need to vote more with our wallets and our business. And if someone's not right, someone's not good, tell them and walk away and find someone else. Because, if you want to pay £75 for someone that's not ready,
yeah.
feel free. But I'm certainly taking that 75 quid somewhere else. Thank you very much.
So definitely, we'll end it here before any more comments come in. Once again, Jason, thanks for joining. Thanks for being on here and dealing with the Bart's just put. He's a bugger. He just put one for the road. I've just poured one for the road. I'm going to have Jason like off screen, maybe just see if he's sticking around. But I am leaving you all. I've had enough of you all. Yeah, thanks for being on. Thanks for sharing some of this pressure because I always feel so much pressure doing lives. Once I get a couple of
just
whiskies in me, it helps a little bit. But
just be yourself. That's what, you can't be anybody else. Be yourself and enjoy.
no.
I mean, at the moment we're still confined to home mostly, so just enjoy reaching out to people.
But yeah, we'll leave it there. And if anyone has any comments or whiskies that I should review, that I'm missing, that I'm overlooking, please put them in the chat, or please put them in the comments, and I'll definitely explore them and have a look. Because I'm all about the varieties of spice of life. So we'll leave you there. And thanks a lot for joining. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us and listen
That's
to us
right.
gab. You know,
I don't mind being filler. It's fine.
yeah, a lot of filler. Right. See you all
Cheers.
later. Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, just left the studio. I just, that's what.